throne of the North. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26, Transactions Between Nobles. What? The orcs are going south, the one who exclaimed was March Miles. His political savvy seemed to be too poor. He didn't understand the way nobles fought each other at all. Others were also more or less shocked and terrified. Even Christian's breathing became a little faster. Viscount Miles sighed. Rag, you come too. Surprisingly, Rag looked at Ryan kindly. Obviously, Ryan's counterattack against Miles made Rag the biggest beneficiary in this conversation between nobles. Viscount Miles still had several pioneering orders in his hand. Perhaps one of them would fall on this person. There were only interests between nobles. Rag, who had just scolded Ryan, nodded to each other like old friends. If Viscount Miles's manor house gave people the sense of ancient grandeur, then the Viscount study was really a complete witness of history. This study was moved from the south by a sanctuary wizard I hired. No detail was changed during the whole process. Viscount Miles sat in front of the desk, and Ryan naturally sat on the leather sofa next to him. As for Miles' two sons, they could only stand. Baron Ryan, if you have anything to say, just say it here. Viscount Miles is old. He doesn't want any accidents to happen in his territory now. He just wants to spend this winter safely. At this time, Ryan no longer beats around the bush. The orcs did go south, and my soldiers found their scouts. Scouts. Viscount Miles' eyes were sharp. Orc scouts. That's right, orcs also have scouts. On the side, Christian seemed to want to prove his presence, and he was surprised and puzzled. Ryan smiled and looked at the eldest son of the Viscount, who had soon become Viscount Miles. Among the orc tribes, the strong and intelligent orcs all have their own military knowledge. Even if their fighting methods have not changed much, they will have eyes like scouts. Christian's face darkened. He felt that Ryan was saying that he was not smart enough. Baron Ryan, please tell me which orc tribe it is, Rag said. He knew that he had already torn his face with other competitors in the family. For the sake of the pioneering order, he certainly didn't want to fall behind. How much do you think this is worth, County Governor? Ryan looked at Viscount Miles. I will give you 2 months' worth of food for 1,000 people. In this way, your frozen land territory should be able to survive this winter. Viscount Miles looked at Ryan and said at the same time, besides, you are not allowed to tell this news to anyone else. Ryan shook his head. Not enough. 25,000 kilograms of food, Lord Viscount. Don't tell me how many people can eat for how long. Those slaves, who can only eat once every 3 days, should they be included? In addition, I also want war horses, 100 war horses sent from the south. Baron Ryan, you are too greedy. Viscount Miles looked at Ryan coldly. No, my information must be worth more than the money. 20,000 kilograms of food, 50 war horses, and the remaining 50 horses. I can make the decision to let the Imperial Chamber of Commerce keep 50 horses for you in the spring of next year. Not enough, Lord Viscount. 20,000 kilograms of food, 100 war horses, not a single one less. Ryan was unwilling to make more concessions, because the price of buying war horses from the Imperial Chamber of Commerce had already gone to the sky. Baron Ryan, I hope you can correctly realize how much 100 war horses are worth. If there were no wars in the pan-dimensional world of gods, the price of war horses would not be too high. In fact, in many territories, war horses were just a name in a state of war. In normal times, they were even used to pull goods and plow fields. But after the pan-dimensional war of the gods, the name of the war horse was separated from other horses. Because after the war of the gods, a large number of extraordinary legions appeared, the quality of war rose sharply, and the specifications of the soldiers had to be at least a physique of trainee knights. These trainee knights wore metal armor, and the more powerful official knights and bronze knights were covered with metal armor on their horses. Such weight, if it were not for specially trained war horses, would not be able to carry it at all. For example, the heavy knight corps of the Empire only had a total of 10,000 people, but the weight of each person, including the armor and equipment, on the warhorse was more than 1,000 pounds. Ordinary horses would be crushed even if they walked a few steps, let alone running. In short, for this reason, the price of war horses has changed from being only 1 or 2 times higher than that of pack horses to now costing dozens of gold coins in the south. and 10 times more in the North Wind Province. The value of an ordinary peasant civilian's lifetime can only be comparable to the value of a warhorse. A Highland warhorse is sold for as much as 500 or 600 gold coins in Lingdu County. After the Imperial Chamber of Commerce leaves, the price may continue to rise, but I know that the price that the Viscount paid for the warhorse from the Imperial Chamber of Commerce would definitely not be this amount. In the south, a warhorse is only 70 or 80 gold coins. After coming to the North Wind Province, those chambers of commerce will at most increase the price 3 or 4 times in front of the Viscount. If it goes any higher, they can't bear the anger of a noble. 200 to 300 gold coins, 100 horses, 20 or 30,000 gold coins. This amount should not be a big deal for the Viscount, right? In the other plane, because of the winter brought by the Pan-Plain War, the Viscount Whitman family, who could only wander around these 400 or 500 people for hundreds of years, still had thousands of gold coins. In the North Wind Province, Viscount Miles, who occupies an entire county and has countless minerals under his control, is 20 or 30,000 gold coins really a lot? You know, for the nobles of the North Wind Province, the Empire has a policy of not collecting taxes for the first 10 years. 70 horses, I can only give you 70 war horses, that's the number. If you can't accept it, I will arrange for someone to find those orc scouts. In the end, the transaction between the two nobles was completed with 20,000 kilograms of grain and 70 war horses. Ryan believed that this news would allow Viscount Miles to earn several times the gold coins from other nobles and the entire Lingdu County. Later, when he heard about the Black Goat tribe, Miles's face became so ugly. So did Christian on the side. This Viscount, it seems that you have had contact with the Black Goat tribe before, Ryan thought in his heart, but he still stood up and said goodbye wisely. As a standard noble, the Miles family would not owe Ryan the wealth of those transactions even if Viscount Miles died now and most of the other Miles died. After leaving the Viscount's manor, Ryan brought his men to the streets where the Empire's chambers of commerce were located. In addition to Viscount Miles's manor, this is the widest street in the entire Lingdu city, because there will be various ox carts and horse carriages shuttling through. Of course, that is not the scene you can see in winter. In these chambers of commerce today, they don't sell things, they only collect them. Chapter 27, Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce. Every winter, the major chambers of commerce in the North Wind Province only purchase goods, but do not sell them. The goods received in the winter will be taken to the south and sold when their own chambers of commerce come from the south in the spring of the following year, earning a huge difference in price. Although the chambers of commerce act on their own, no one dares to provoke them in the North Wind Province. Even the nobles do not want to be envied by a noble because of such things. The chambers of commerce were considered a minority before the pan-dimensional war of the gods. They were able to rise and become the level that the nobles have to pay attention to now because of the war. After the pan-dimensional war of the gods, the northern border of the continent was covered with wind and snow, and countless nobles moved south and fled. Too many nobles piled up on the warm land of 1/3 of the south, and naturally, wars would inevitably break out. In addition, because the quality of wars was improving, the emergence of the extraordinary legion led to the scale and heroism of wars far exceeding the previous ones. One by one, the chambers of commerce rose during that period of time. They follow their respective masters and follow the war legions on expeditions. If they won, most of the spoils would be handed over to these chambers of commerce for sale. When the chamber of commerce is linked to the war, it is impossible for the chamber of commerce to be unimportant. Of course, as I said before, there is no chamber of commerce without nobles behind it. The more powerful the chamber of commerce, the more powerful the nobles behind it. Only the nobles can allow the chamber of commerce to keep such huge interests. Otherwise, just the tariffs in each territory can force the chamber of commerce to go bankrupt. The most powerful chamber of commerce in the Floor Empire is naturally the chamber of commerce directly under the royal family, but it is not called the Royal Chamber of Commerce, but the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Because the largest profit of this Chamber of Commerce comes from transactions with kingdoms and noble territories outside the Southern Empire. It is not just the royal family that has invested, they just occupy the absolute majority. The branch of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce in Lingdu City is naturally magnificent and more luxurious than the property of some pioneering knights in the city. They naturally dare not be better than the Baron, and the Baron is unwilling to be embarrassed to compare with the Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, Is there anything I can help you with? As soon as Ryan walked into the wide hall, a maid came up with bright eyes. I'm Baron Ryan. I want your steward to come out and speak. No matter who they are all humble in front of nobles. Naturally, if the nobles who are on the opposite side are too polite to the commoners, it will be counterproductive. The maid's eyes dimmed, but she hurried to call the steward. I'm Chandler, meet Baron Ryan. A middle-aged man with a big belly came in front of Ryan, his face full of flattery. I have some goods, see how much they are worth. Ryan asked the soldiers behind him to take out the bearskin rug that Baron Hutton loved so much. In just a moment, Chandler's eyes lit up. He was a businessman, so he naturally saw the value of this thing in an instant. Those noble ladies in the south would definitely get it at any price and show it off in that circle. But the price he offered made Ryan frown. 300 gold, Baron Ryan, I am willing to pay 300 gold for this bearskin. Ryan did not speak, but stared at Chandler until the merchant in front of him shrank his neck and dared not look at him. Baron, are you dissatisfied? Chandler was still somewhat confident. After all, if any baron of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce had to bow his head, how could they do business? Let me guess, Viscount Miles, you have to take a lot of money from you every year, right? Ryan looked at Chandler and said calmly. This price is not only excessive, but also low even if it is a normal purchase price. Chandler smiled and said, the Viscount exempted the Imperial Chamber of Commerce from taxes in Lingdu County. In return, the Lingdu County branch of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce will give the Viscount 10,000 gold every year, so this is why the Imperial Chamber of Commerce knew about the orc's southward march as soon as he left, and then began to suppress the prices of various items. Ryan turned and left, but Chandler behind him was anxious. This bearskin rug, even if purchased at a premium, can be sold at a price 3 to 5 times higher in the south. Lord Ryan, we are willing to buy this bearskin rug for 600 gold, no, 700 gold, no. Ryan did not even turn his head. Chandler naturally did not dare to blatantly stop a noble. Turning around, Ryan walked into the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce, opposite the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the Blade Rose, a smiling woman greeted Ryan. On her chest, a thorny rose was embroidered on a sharp blade. It was the emblem of the Blade Rose family, an emblem designed by the most dazzling female countess in the empire. How much do you want for these things? Ryan asked the soldiers behind him to take out everything. He believed that the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce, which saw him walking out of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce opposite, would not do anything weird. The female steward named Irina called several merchants to come forward. It took only 2 or 3 minutes to give Ryan a number. Master Ryan, our Chamber of Commerce is willing to purchase these goods from you at the price of 6,000 gold coins. In 2 or 3 minutes, the Chamber of Commerce already knew Ryan's name. Irina's smile was intoxicating, and when it was stained with the light of the gold coins, even Ryan was fascinated. But he still kept it calm. These inheritances belonging to Viscount Whitman, in his estimation, should be between 4,500 and 5,000 gold coins. The price offered by the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce was much higher. He looked at the woman in front of him with some curiosity. Have you always done business this way? Of course not. If the Baron had come at another time, we could only offer 4,200 gold coins. The extra gold coins are for a request, or a deal with the Baron. Oh? Tell me about it. Not long ago, the Imperial Chamber of Commerce made a deal with Baron Kendra, purchasing 100 sets of armor and 300 long swords for 1,800 gold coins, and also signed a contract to purchase 30,000 kilograms of grain within half a month. I guess Lord Ryan should know the reason. After saying that, Irina moved closer to Ryan, and the faint incense made people feel comfortable. 1,800 gold coins for a piece of information. You are really generous. Ryan was not afraid of the woman's courage at all, and looked into her eyes. But I promised Viscount Miles that I would not tell the news to anyone else. Irina laughed. Baron Ryan is indeed a lord who has made the frozen territory flourish. He is indeed different. Then, 6,000 gold coins. Deal. Although Ryan didn't say anything, Irina actually heard everything. Blade Rose didn't need to know the whole truth, and Ryan's words had already told them that they would do whatever the Imperial Chamber of Commerce did, and they would definitely not lose money. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28: The Two Sides of the Nobility. This woman actually asked about the frozen land territory. To be honest, Ryan was still very surprised. After all, his frozen land territory was far away from the border of the Northwind province, separated by a mountain forest and swamp. No one wanted to go there, especially in winter. Ms. Irina is well informed, Ryan smiled. This woman would never know the true situation of the frozen land territory. After all, there was no road in his territory. Then, it could only be Baron Hatton. With the IQ of the Baron, he would probably be pressed to the ground by this woman. Ryan understood that Irina was just being clever to get some information. After all, nobles could not abide by any rules when facing civilians. We merchants make money by information asymmetry. Trading with a lord may allow me to be a big manager in the Chamber of Commerce. Irina looked at Ryan pitifully, and then handed him a silver forged card. With this card, Baron Ryan can enjoy a 95% discount at our Blade Rose. Please take care of my business in the future. I thought that it was easy to deal with a young baron. After all, Baron Ryan in front of me looked like he was fascinated by me. Looking at the face that could make countless women intoxicated, Irina didn't mind going deeper for the sake of this communication. 95% discount? That's just right. Ryan shook the silver card in his hand. I plan to purchase 200,000 kilograms of grain from Blade Rose. 200,000 kilograms? Irina opened her eyes wide, and this time she was not pretending. How could the broken place of the frozen land have so much food? Not only food, but also 300 slaves. If there are slaves who can forge iron, I want them all. If not, think of a way to help me find a group of blacksmiths who are willing to go back to the frozen land with me. For each one I find, I will give you a gold coin as a reward. If you can help me get this done, I will give priority to your Blade Rose in future transactions in the frozen land. Many times, the Imperial Chamber of Commerce is the first choice for many nobles to trade. In this case, if other chambers of commerce want to get a piece of the pie, they can only offer more benefits. From Ryan's words just now, Irina has heard which things will appreciate and value in the future, but she gritted her teeth and still planned to sell them to Ryan at the original price. We also need to go to other places to prepare 200,000 kilograms of food, which may take several days. The food is a total of 2,000 gold coins. Lord Ryan, please don't cheat me. 300 slaves are easy to say. There are not many other things in the Northwind province, but there are many slaves. Moreover, the batch left by our Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce are all capable of farming and frost resistance. A total of 1,200 gold coins, but the slaves who can forge iron, Irina gritted her teeth. 500 gold coins, no, 600, I will go to other business houses for you, Lord Ryan, to get 10. In the end, after all the transactions were completed, Irina asked someone to move out 2,200 gold coins. The box was so shiny that everyone couldn't help but look at it a few more times. But this belonged to Baron Ryan, and no one dared to have any ideas. Food and slaves would take some time. Ryan gave Irina 3 days because he still needed time to transport the things back to the frozen land. The orcs didn't know when they would appear in the Northwind province, and he didn't want to meet the orcs on the way back. From this point, it can be seen that Viscount Miles is still powerful. The things he traded with Ryan were only half a day away, and the butler came to tell him that they were ready and he could pick them up at any time. Rosen, with a transaction, Ryan was naturally invited to stay in the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce. He did nothing but wait. Calling Rosen, Ryan handed a warhorse he got from Miles to Rosen. Take my letter and go to Viscount Dragon to visit the Viscount immediately. Don't say anything, give my letter to the Viscount, and then bring back the Viscount's words. After completing this, you will go directly back to the frozen territory. Yes, Rosen grabbed the letter tightly, treating it as something more precious than his own life. Don't be nervous, it's not a big deal, Ryan said with a smile. A noble must not lack virtues such as integrity, fearlessness, and majesty, but at the same time, a qualified noble must not be without insidiousness, cunningness, and greed. What can't be sold to others? In Lingdu County, only 2 nobles are qualified to know the news of the orcs' southward march in advance. After getting 20,000 kilograms of food and 70 war horses from Viscount Miles, he will get more from Viscount Dragon. You know, there are only 2 Viscounts in Lingdu County, and they are in a competitive relationship, whether it is the Viscount or the family behind the Viscount. You have to know that this is in the orc disaster of the Black Goat people. A little information gap may lead to the destruction of many nobles. After instructing Rosen, Ryan began to talk to Irina about where to buy enchanted armor in Lingdu City. At the same time, Ryan also asked about the relationship between the Black Goat people and Viscount Miles. 15 years ago, there was a large-scale orc invasion of the North Wind province. At that time, the invasion was led by the unintelligent Bearman tribe, but it also caused huge losses to the North Wind province. On that occasion, there was a Black Goat tribe among them. They took advantage of the time when Viscount Miles led his army to fight the Bearmen to raid Viscount Miles' territory, robbed Viscount Miles of all his wealth, and ate Viscount Miles' eldest son. The Viscount's first wife couldn't eat for several days because of what happened that year, and finally died. Now Viscount Miles' eldest son, Christian, and the children after him are actually the eldest sons of Viscount Miles' second wife. It is said that when the first wife was still alive, this one was just Viscount Miles' lover. As for the real eldest son, I heard that he was once called the most Viscount-like person in the Miles family. He showed amazing political and military talents at the age of 10, so that's the case. Ryan sighed. No wonder the Viscount became so angry after hearing the news about the Black Goat man. With the death of a true heir, Viscount Miles must be desperate. After all, the current Christian is not as good as his youngest son, Rag. Does Viscount Miles have conflicts with the family of Earl Clayton? Ryan found that the news of these chambers of commerce were really well informed. Irina looked at Ryan in confusion. During this day, she collected more information about the young baron. When Grand Duke Maze conquered the North Wind province, no Maze appeared in the North Wind province. It is said that Earl Clayton was involved. Chapter 29 The Brand's Night. Ryan never thought that this would be the answer. 30 years ago, the Clayton family was one of the people who prevented Grand Duke Maze from obtaining the ruling authority and status of the North Wind province, and even caused no descendants of the Maze family to be enfleft to the North Wind province to become nobles. Because of this reason, it is natural that the nobles who followed Grand Duke Maze did not get all the credit and wealth they deserved. Therefore, Viscount Miles's malice towards Ryan is justified. If that's the case, then they brought me to the North Wind province to become a fiefdom baron, which didn't even think about keeping me alive. At this moment, Ryan seemed to have finally found the tale of the assassin who assassinated him that year. Although Grand Duke Maze did not get any territory in the North Wind province, which noble in the North Wind province today has no relationship with Grand Duke Maze? Most of the pioneering knights were even soldiers of Grand Duke Maze before. I'm not the one pushed out by the nobles of the Empire to appease the anger of Grand Duke Myers, am I? Ryan thought unkindly. He now felt that the entire Zero Crossing city was full of unruly people who wanted to murder him. What noble would be safe and sound? If his original body had not died, would he have traveled through time? Others were safe. As a baron of the Clayton family, it was absolutely impossible for him to integrate into the circle of the North Wind province. Everyone looked like the mastermind behind the assassination. Even the closest Viscount Miles was a good possibility. He had the energy to arrange assassins in the mountains and forests on the way to the frozen land. Thinking of this, Ryan found Irina and asked her if she could speed up the preparations. Running away was the safest choice. It took 2.5 days in a hurry. Ryan even spent gold coins to buy a batch of oxen and horses to pull carts. A group of hundreds of people set off on their journey home. But this time, Ryan and a group of soldiers had already ridden war horses and were completely separated from the others. How are these war horses? Ryan asked Brand and the remaining knights in attendance. They are much better than those pack horses. Brand stroked his war horse with great joy. After getting these war horses, Ryan immediately rewarded his guardian knight. This best war horse belonged to him completely and thoroughly. As for the others, the ownership of the war horses under them still belonged to Ryan, and they would completely belong to them after the reward in the future. They only had the right to use them now, but it was enough to make them ecstatic. Can a knight without a mount be called a knight? There is also a saying on the mainland that if a knight has a mount, the possibility of breakthrough is greater. This is absolutely correct, because on the third day, when the team walked into the frozen swamp, Brand's aura became much deeper. Are you sure you are ready? Ryan looked at Brand seriously. There is only one chance, my lord. Brand will not let you down. Brand knelt on one knee in front of Ryan, and the soldiers standing around him were also solemn. They were alert to the surroundings and also looked at Ryan. With a finger, 300 spiritual powers disappeared, and instead, a blood-colored pocket tear sank into Brand's forehead. At the same time, Brand began to shake the blood in his body. And the aura on the surface of his body became particularly terrifying. The second blessing can be 100 spiritual powers or 300 spiritual powers. Ryan chose the one with the most without hesitation. The spiritual blessing cannot directly allow Brand to break through to the Brand's Knight. This step of leap needs to be done by himself. But the effect of the spiritual blessing is equivalent to the life potion that Night Water took at the beginning. No, it can even be said to be better than the life potion. In Ryan's view, such a dear spirit blessing is equivalent to the best potion needed by the formal knight to break through the Brand's Knight. At this stage, there is no more valuable means than this blessing. In addition, with Brand's matching of the dear spirit breathing method, Ryan didn't think there was any possibility of failure. Sure enough, half an hour later, circles of blood-red airflow surrounded Brand, and tiny cracks appeared on the frozen ground. Knight's fighting spirit, the symbol of the Brand's Knight. At this point, Brand is no longer limited to simple skills. He will be able to use fighting spirit to activate some powerful combat skills. For example, Fearless Guard. A trace of blood-red airflow appeared on Ryan's body, not only him, but also the surrounding soldiers, but at the same time, they all felt that their blood and energy were converging towards Brand. But the ones who really did not hold back were the war horses, whose blood and energy were much stronger than those of human knights. Originally, this might have consumed a lot of combat skills, but at this moment, with the help of the war horses, Brand was able to maintain it easily. Sensitive steps. A phantom appeared under Brand's feet, and Ryan even saw that he could jump on the leaves that had not yet fallen to the ground. Boom! Finally, the knight's sword fell on the hard ground, and a large pit with a diameter of about 1 meter appeared. The swamp in the north of the Northwind province was frozen in the cold winter, but it was very hard. The soldiers and slaves around could not imagine how they would die if such a force fell on them. My lord, I have fulfilled my mission. Brand knelt on one knee in front of Ryan, his eyes firm. Okay, my territory finally has a Brand's Knight. Ryan was also very happy, and immediately announced that the first set of armor forged after returning would be given to Brand. In his opinion, as a baron, it is natural to have at least one Brand's Knight in his hands, and the Silver Knight is the top. After hanging out with barons like Baron Hatton for a long time, he almost forgot the strength that a baron should have. Thinking of this, Ryan looked at the soldiers. If anyone among you can be the first to break through to the official knight, I will also give you armor and long swords, as well as knight lances. In the frozen land, the first 10 knights who break through will all receive armor, as well as their own houses and fields. Long live the Lord! The cheers of the soldiers also inspired the slaves. It seemed that going to the frozen land was not a bad result. After crossing the mountains and forests again, Ryan finally decided to build a road next year. Otherwise, Irina, the big-breasted Irina of the Blade Rose, would definitely not lead the Chamber of Commerce into the frozen land. As for this year, let's talk about it next year. Chapter 30 Military Meeting in the Northern Province. When Ryan returned to the frozen territory with food and war horses, Rosen had already returned 2 days earlier. He also brought back the words of Viscount Dragon. Deal. These 2 words represented that the Viscount agreed to the war horses and food that Ryan wanted in the letter. Good, this war horse will belong to you from now on. Ryan patted Rosen's shoulder with satisfaction. Rosen represented Baron Ryan to meet a Viscount alone. He represented Ryan's face and the frozen territory. If he performed too poorly, the Viscount would never fully meet his requirements, but would bargain like Miles. Rosen looked proud. It seemed that Ryan's pat on the shoulder was also a very high reward. With food, Ryan's hanging heart was at ease. The frozen territory could finally accelerate the drastic development and transformation. When we build the road next year, we can transport the swamp's oil from the swamp to the fields to increase the vitality of the cultivated land. The mountains and forests in the south can also be used to develop orchards. Since trees can survive the cold wind, fruit trees should be able to survive. Standing in the future Northgar castle, Ryan held a hot water bottle made of birch bark in his hand, looking at his territory with satisfaction, watching Brand at the foot of the mountain training hundreds of soldiers. He was teaching them the basic skills of combat skills learned from the blessing of the deer spirit, which would be very helpful for those soldiers to break through the Brand's Knight in the future. Even if it doesn't work, the agile steps can also increase the combat effectiveness of the soldiers on the battlefield. In the distant mountains, more than 1,000 slaves are working hard to reclaim the farmland. After Ryan came back, He announced that the number of slaves who could become civilians would be increased, and the initial 10 places would have 18 months of tax exemption. As for tax exemption, Ryan didn't care. As the new Baron of the North Wind Province, his territory would not have to pay taxes to the Empire for 10 years. Of course, this is the territory that belongs to the Lord alone, and it does not need to pay taxes. The ones who pay taxes are the civilians and some miscellaneous people in the territory. It's just that the free people pay taxes to the Lord, and then the Lord pays it to the Empire. But this is also considered a tax on the territory, because the Empire's tax-free policy does not fall on the civilians. They always have to pay taxes, but the Lord keeps it for himself during the tax-free period and does not give it to the Empire. Therefore, it depends on Ryan's mood whether to take this little profit. When there are more people in the territory in the future, taxation will make sense. Lords and small nobles really need to give out, in fact, offerings. The 5 ranks of Duke, Marquess, Earl, Viscount, and Baron, the noble lords below all need to offer tributes to the royal family and the great nobles, which can also be regarded as a kind of inheritance of the Empire. Like Ryan, as the Lord of the Frozen Land, a Baron, he comes from the Clayton family, and the Clayton family is a Count family. He needs to give a portion of money to the Clayton family every year. On the one hand, it is to deepen the relationship between the two sides. Although they have separated, they are still a family and stand on one side in the political disputes of the Empire. There is no fixed amount of this tribute, which depends on the wealth of the territory. Some lords can only take out a few hundred gold coins, while some lords can squander tens of thousands of gold coins. Ryan felt that the Clayton family must not have thought of taking his money, so he did not give it. What the Frozen Land was like in the past, Ryan, as the Lord, was probably the last to know the situation. I also asked Irina to inquire about the news of Earl Clayton, but I'm afraid I can only wait until the beginning of spring every year. The peace of the Frozen Land became more peaceful after having food. But half a month later, the atmosphere in the North Wind Province became more and more serious. Many lords have already known the news that the orcs will go south this year, and the one leading the invasion of North Wind Province is the notorious Black Goat Man. North Wind City. As the only giant city in North Wind Province, there are more than 400,000 civilians living here. There are thousands of acres of fertile fields outside the city, which can be regarded as the most fertile land in North Wind Province. The governor of North Wind Province is the family of Earl Winter. This earl was the only earl who won the political struggle and stayed in North Wind Province after following Grand Duke Myers to occupy North Wind Province. Every year, the tax revenue of North Wind City alone makes the Winter family earn a lot of gold coins. Not to mention, the Winter family also occupies the largest iron and copper mines in North Wind Province. They even built the Winter family's manor and an indestructible fortress deep in the mine. At this moment, from the Governor's Hall of North Wind City, Earl Winter, who still looks middle-aged, looked at the nobles who sat down one after another and said, "Okay, be quiet." Everyone quickly quieted down, and the Earl spoke again. "Have all the nobles of the province arrived here?" The nobles in the hall looked at each other. The circle of nobles was not large. There were only so many nobles in a province, and everyone knew each other. They didn't seem to notice that anyone hadn't arrived. At this time, Viscount Miles stood up with the help of Christian. He was not only a viscount, but also the governor of Lingdu County, one of the most powerful nobles in Bifang Province. Reporting to the governor, the Baron Ryan Clayton of the Frozen Territory of Lingdu County has not arrived yet, and perhaps he will not come. When hearing the surname Clayton, many nobles looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes, while some powerful nobles looked at Earl Winter and Viscount Miles, wondering what they were thinking. The Frozen Territory is a broken place, and the orcs will starve to death if they go to rob it. What's the point of the Frozen Territory Baron coming or not? The person who spoke was also sitting in the direction of Lingdu County. He was also a middle-aged man, and it was another Viscount of Lingdu County, Viscount Dragon. Erical, this military meeting is for all the nobles in the North Wind Province. No one can stay out of it. The orcs are heading south. As nobles, we should bravely move forward instead of hiding behind others. Otherwise, what right do we have to be a noble? Viscount Miles was old but had a loud voice. His words, which had been passed down for hundreds of years, were indeed recognized by many people. Some people did not participate in the military meeting of the entire province. Did they want to be isolated? Hide behind? None of you here has a territory closer to the orcs than the frozen land territory, right? Dragon was not afraid of Viscount Miles at all, and he also had supporters around him. As the two Viscounts continued to fight, this military meeting, which was supposed to discuss how to resist the orcs, soon split into two factions. If someone knows history, it is obvious that these two factions are the nobles who once defected to the Empire in the land of the Northwind Province, and the other faction is the nobles who took root in the north from the south of the Empire. Alright, finally, seeing that nothing had been accomplished, Earl Winter looked at Viscount Miles with dissatisfaction, and then his eyes fell on the other two. There were 3 earls in the Northwind Province, and these 2 were once earls on this land. It was impossible for Myers to kill all the nobles on this land, as they were all more or less related by marriage. Chapter 31, The Nobles divided into 2 groups. The military meeting is to discuss how to deal with the orcs, not to let you form cliques. Since the Frozen Baron is not coming, then don't consider the protection of that territory. Then Earl Winter said to the 2 earls kindly, Love, Muia, you should be more familiar with the Black Goat people. Tell us, Love Wise, the heir of the Wise Earl family, and the other Muia Solon, an old man, who experienced a battle of the Northwind Province. Generally speaking, in such a meeting, only the title of the Earl is called. I didn't expect that Earl Winter and these 2 were so friendly. The nobles who didn't know the reason speculated about the relationship between the 3 earls, while the nobles who knew the past sneered. The former Earl Winter was the one who had the loudest voice for the reduction of the title of the local nobles in the Northwind Province. Earl Solon, you are older than me, so you should speak. Earl Weiss looked at Earl Solon and was quite respectful to the old man. Then let me, an old fellow, tell you, Muia Solon, this old man is much stronger and more robust than he looks. He walked to the rough map of Northwind Province fixed on the wall. 53 years ago, I personally participated in a battle led by the Black Goat Man, where 1,000,000 orcs marched south to Northwind Province. That time, Northwind Province lost half of its military strength. The fortresses in Xiangshan Plain were all destroyed. The Frost Wolf Cavalry Corps of Grand Duke Northwind lost 12,000 elite soldiers. It did not recover until the war between the Empire and Northwind Province. Hearing this, many nobles looked sad. Yes, if it weren't for that battle, it would not be so easy for Grand Duke Myers to conquer Northwind Province. Someone sighed, but was quickly reminded by the nobles next to him that they were all nobles of the Empire now and could no longer think about the past. Over there, Earl Solon continued to speak solemnly. The time when the orcs went south, the fortress in Xiangshan Plain was breached from underground. The fortress that had been there for hundreds of years could not even stop the orcs. The Black Goat Man is far more cunning than we imagined. The entire Northwind Province lost more than 1/3 of its population because of the loss of the fortress. I dare say that even today, those people have not been fully recovered. Facing the orcs led by the Black Goat Man, my suggestion is to take the initiative to attack and not defend. The Black Goat Man will come up with many ways to destroy our defense line. Only by taking the initiative to attack and kill the orcs and killing them to a certain number so that they can survive this winter, the orcs will naturally retreat to the north. Even the Black Goat Man cannot force them to continue attacking. Hearing Earl Solon's words, many lords nodded in agreement. Why? It's very simple, because once 1,000,000 orcs appear in the Northwind Province unimpeded, who will suffer the most? It's still the noble territories like them. Their fortresses are just fortresses, not solid cities. Mura, if we want to take the initiative, where do you think it would be best to start a war with the orcs? Earl Winter looked at Earl Solon and asked. In the Xiangshan Plain, there used to be a large area of Xiangshan trees. After decades of cultivation, most of them have recovered. Using the dense forest to divide the orcs can effectively kill those defenseless orcs. I don't think so. Someone stood up. It was Viscount Hogg, the governor of Yinchuan County in the Northwind Province. He was recognized as a powerful viscount in the Northwind Province and had a strong army under his command. We don't know the number of orcs yet. If there are really 1,000,000 orcs, the Xiangshan Plain cannot stop them. It didn't work even with the fortresses back then, and it is even less possible now without fortresses. The dense forest can divide the orcs, but it can also block the charge of our cavalry. Do we have to give up the advantage of cavalry and use infantry to fight the orcs? Earl Winter looked at Viscount Hogg and asked. Then how do you think Viscount Hogg should defend? Viscount Hogg said proudly, take each county as a unit and build its own defense line. At the same time, concentrate troops to wait for the arrival of the orcs. Earl Winter's Flying Wolf Cavalry can serve as a liaison between each other. If there is a county that has not been attacked by orcs, then troops will be sent to reinforce other counties, use defense instead of offense. Since the orcs are going to attack fortresses and cities, there will be huge losses. When enough of them die, they will naturally retreat to the north. After the Viscount finished speaking, someone stood up. I agree with Viscount Hog's approach. Defense and attack can inflict more casualties on the orcs than in the Xiangshan plains. How ridiculous. Defense? Our territories are all in the north of the province. Facing the orcs head-on, what can we do even if we defend them? Our territories have been looted long ago. Can we stop the orcs by rushing into the Xiangshan plains without thinking? Our cavalry can't play any advantage there. Cavalry? A warhorse costs 300 gold coins in the Northwind province. Do you have so many cavalry? Few does not mean none. Only cavalry can crush the orcs. Infantry is at a disadvantage when facing orcs. The Xiangshan plains is the only passage for the orcs to go south. Besides, there are mountains on both sides. As long as we put enough pressure on the orcs there, they will naturally retreat. The last time the orcs went south was 5 years ago. In 5 years, what kind of life have they lived in the north? How could they retreat easily? At the meeting, the nobles once again split into two groups. One group was the nobles in the northern part of the Northwind province. Their territories must have been the first to be hit. The other group was the nobles in the southern part of the province. The number of orcs that could reach their territories was small. Especially in Chuan County, which was in the southernmost part of the Northwind province, close to the Wing Canyon. At this time, the two distinct groups changed from the previous indigenous nobles and southern nobles to the division of the geographical gap between the northern and southern territories of the province. In short, it was all about interests. Okay, looking at the noisy nobles, Winter immediately roared, and the breath of the holy knight suppressed, making the hall a little suffocated. Since you can't come to an agreement, then raise your hands, and the minority obeys the majority. Who agrees with a method of taking the initiative? Winter said, looking at the number of raised hands, and smiled and asked again, who agrees with Viscount Hog? After speaking, Earl Winter raised his hand. And more than 60% of the nobles present chose to agree. This result is actually not surprising. Because when the Northwind province was taken, most of the territory was redivided. Some of these nobles would choose the south, which is warmer and farther away from the orcs. Only when they had no choice would they choose the territory in the north of the province, which had less fertile land and was colder. Chapter 32 Acting Skills. In fact, as the governor of the Northwind province, Earl Winter has the final say. He can order all the nobles' armies to assemble, and he has the final say on how to fight. But it is obvious that Earl Winter does not want to take the responsibility after the orcs go south, and calls out two people to take the blame. When the orcs return to the north, the lords and nobles of the ravaged territories will naturally resent the people who proposed the plan. For example, Viscount Hog and Earl Winter can stand up at that time to mediate the conflicts between the parties and make a fortune from it. Just like 30 years ago, in the political struggle of the Empire, even Grand Duke Myers could not enter the Northwind province, but Earl Winter finally became the governor of the province. Since the plan has been decided, let's go back and prepare. The earlier the defense line is established, the more orcs can be killed, Earl Winter said with a smile. He was not worried about the orcs going south, because whether it was his territory fortress or Northwind City, they were the most stable. If it really didn't work, he could exercise the right of the governor to ask the surrounding nobles for support. In fact, no one mentioned one thing in this meeting. If I remember correctly, the Empire allocates 1 million gold coins to the Northwind province every year, so that the nobles of the Northwind province can rebuild the fortress on the Xiangshan plain. When Grand Duke Myers conquered the Northwind province, he also proposed to put the garrison of the Wing Canyon on the Xiangshan plain, saying that the Wing Canyon is no longer the border of the Empire, but the Xiangshan plain of the Northwind provinces. But 30 years have passed and there is not a single mound of earth on the Xiangshan plain. Even if Ryan was excluded from the frozen territory, Viscount Miles and Zero Crossing County would give him a copy of the results and news. At the same time, Viscount Dragon also sent people to prevent Viscount Miles from not doing his job. 30 million gold coins, but not a single hair. This Earl Winter, isn't he too greedy? Ryan certainly knew that it was impossible for Earl Winter to be the only one who swallowed the gold coins, and those nobles probably had a share. In Ryan's opinion, neither the so-called active attack nor passive defense is a good choice. Those lords completely prioritize their own interests and then think about how to fight. But what does this have to do with me, the Frozen Baron? Ryan put down the arrangements in his hand. Viscount Miles asked him to send 500 soldiers to Zero Crossing City to participate in the defense. Ryan walked out of the study and looked at the people waiting for Viscount Miles. He couldn't help but sigh and said, "Go back and tell Viscount Miles that the Viscount is not unaware of the situation in the Frozen Territory. When I came to the Frozen Territory last year, I passed Zero Crossing City and there were only 10 soldiers and an old butler who couldn't walk. What can I use to defend Zero Crossing County, Baron Ryan? I am following the order of the county governor to require every lord in Zero Crossing County to send troops to establish a defense line." Ryan was not too afraid of Ryan. It was obvious that he had received an order before coming. The county governor has issued an order from Lingdu County in the Northwind province of the Empire that every noble cannot shirk the order to fight the orcs. But, it's not that I don't want to, but there are really not that many people in the frozen land, Ryan said, then gritted his teeth. How about this? I'll let 300, no, 200 slaves. Ryan hadn't finished speaking, and outside the gate, a nervous Diran had already rushed in, and there was even a lot of blood on his body. "My lord, it's bad. We found a Tauren army in the north. There are so many, we can't hold on." "What?" Ryan was shocked, and then looked at Diran with an angry face. "Then why don't you take the soldiers of the Baron Castle? No, take all the slaves over to stop the orcs. What are you still doing? If an orc breaks into my territory, I will chop off your head." "Yes, I'll go right away." Diran ran out quickly, and then Ryan saw Rosen rushing in quickly. "My lord, we found a group of hyenas in the foothills to the west, about 500 in number, and they seem to be heading towards us. Go find Brand." This was not a setup, so it should be true. After saying that, he looked at the man of Viscount Miles. "As you can see, the Frozen Land territory is the closest place to the orcs. I asked the county governor to send soldiers to help me protect the territory." In the end, this man returned to Lingdu City with 500 gold coins that Ryan had given. After sending the man away, Ryan looked at another one. Wolf Dragon, a member of Viscount Dragon's family, was just a distant relative. "Viscount Dragon wants me to send troops to support him." "That's what the Viscount said," Wolf said respectfully. "The defense line established by Viscount Miles in Lingdu County is actually centered on Lingdu City and connected to the surrounding fortresses. The Viscount's territory is not directly behind a defense line, so the Viscount wants to lead his men to establish the defense line." "My master said that Baron Ryan is a friend of Viscount Dragon's family." "Friend?" Ryan smiled in his heart. "But you also saw that my territory is not peaceful. I can see the shadow of orcs almost every day. The Xiangshan Plain is still some distance away from the frozen territory. Even if the orcs go south, there won't be many orcs here. That's not up to you. You know, the scouts of the Black Oat have appeared in the frozen territory this time. Who knows if they are thinking of a sneak attack or have found a second way." In the end, Wolf also returned to Viscount Dragon's territory with Ryan's 500 gold coins. "It's funny. You let me, who is in the most danger, send troops to support you. There's nothing wrong with nobles helping each other, but Ryan is really not sure whether there will be a large number of orcs appearing in the frozen land, because these days, there are traces of orcs every day, and even wild animals are scared away. Kobolds." Ryan walked out of the Baron's castle, and then saw 70 or 80 soldiers escorting more than 100 spotted dog-headed people towards Rhino Horn Mountain in the distance. Hyena people are also a branch of dog-headed people. Soon Ryan saw this alien orc with a dog head, hair all over the body and dog claws at the foot of the mountain. "Why are you here?" Ryan asked, and the soldier who was holding down the dog head had already punched it 3 times, making the dog head dizzy. "The master is asking you a question, hurry up and say it." After a busy conversation, Ryan roughly understood the cause and effect. That year, a group of hyenas came to rob the frozen land, but not only did they not rob anything, but most of them starved to death when they returned, becoming a joke among the orcs and regarded as a shame by this hyena tribe. This time they came to wash away the shame, but they were captured by Brand and his soldiers in a short time. More than 100 kobolds escaped, and this group is the unlucky one now. It's just right. The road will be repaired in 2 months, and these orcs will only be of this use. For now, carry the wood for me. Chapter 33, Battle of the Extraordinary Legion. In the first month of the next year, when the snow and ice were flying in the cold winter, The orcs in the north really couldn't bear it. The biting cold needed the burning of blood to dispel it, and the hunger in their stomachs made the orcs want to eat the food stored by the southern humans right now. So, under the leadership of the Black Goat people, a mighty wave of orcs appeared in the North Wind province. Grab all their food, I'm starving to death, I want to eat meat, I want to eat that fragrant barley. With the chaos, countless orcs rushed to those warm territories, wreaking havoc in the territories where there were chickens and dogs flying. Damn orcs, soldiers, raise your swords and charge, there was a noble roaring, riding on a warhorse and ordering his soldiers and slaves to charge at the orcs. He had a look of fear in his eyes. He didn't expect the orcs to come so soon. According to experience, shouldn't they come half a month after they are completely hungry and have no food? Damn it, I should have listened to them and arranged the property process earlier. The noble just finished speaking when he heard his soldiers in front of him retreating continuously. The one who gave the order was his knight attendant. Retreat, retreat, everyone retreat to the fortress to defend. The terrified voice spread from the warhorse in all directions, and then he saw his lord looking at him angrily. Costa, what do you want to do? That's my fortress. What do you want to do? I'm going to chop off all your heads and stick them on the fence, the noble roared, and the soldiers and slaves around him did not dare to go past the baron to the tall and luxurious fortress. Master Bernard, run away quickly, there are too many orcs, it's impossible to count them. There are at least tens of thousands of them. Costa rode his warhorse to the side of Baron Bernard and said in a voice of great fear, Master Bernard, we can't beat them. We only have a few hundred soldiers, but the orcs are endless. At this time, Baron Bernard finally saw the dark waves in the distance, and his face turned pale. Quick, hurry back to the fortress and defend it, the noble trembled all over. He had never seen so many monsters running around. They were threatening and ferocious, like orcs who wanted to eat his barony as if it were bread. But when he gave the order, it was too late. Soldiers were fleeing, slaves were fleeing, and no one stopped the orcs' charge. After a short pause, the nearest Black Goat orc had already rushed to the front of the crowd. Kill all these humans, everything will be ours, a Black Goat man roared, and then he stabbed the human in front of him with a cold head. The warmth flowing through the orcs' bodies gradually made them manic, and there was only pure killing in their eyes. Kill them all. There was a dark light flowing on the horns of the Black Goat men, and they also had their own extraordinary system. In their hoof-like hands, they held two scimitars, which seemed to be weapons cut off from the heads of other Black Goat men. In an instant, the screams and wails, despair and bloodthirstiness in the human territory reached their peak. Tens of thousands of orcs filled the territory in an instant, and then began the unique way of looting that belonged to orcs. Hanshan County, as the closest county to the Xiangshan Plain, the nobles who were facing a life-and-death crisis had spared no effort to set up a line of defense. They had received news of the appearance of orcs. At the same time, there was news of the death of nobles. Baron Berna's territory is all gone. Everyone died, including the Baron. No one escaped, not only Baron Berna, but also Knight Yanis, Knight Sak and their knights' territories were all overwhelmed by orcs. The defense line of Hanshan County is actually composed of Hanshan City and several fortresses on the hillsides of mountains covered by glaciers all year round. 80% of the lords of the entire county have sent their property to the city and rushed here with their families. But war is not a game, it is a real life and death, so even if there are fortresses and cities that are easy to defend and difficult to attack, these nobles cannot rest assured. Viscount Landa, the orcs are coming. What do you think? Should we just wait? Many nobles subconsciously looked at Viscount Landa in the middle of the crowd. He was the governor of Hanshan County and the only Viscount here. Not going out. Viscount Landa was also very nervous. He looked at the sky far outside the city where he seemed to be able to see the orcs, and did not dare to take the initiative to attack. We only have 50,000 soldiers. We can only defend the line of defense. It is impossible for all these orcs to be gathered in Hanshan County. That night, when all the nobles were sleeping soundly, countless orcs roared outside the city. The awakened nobles panicked and hurriedly put on their clothes and went to Viscount Landa's manor. Viscount Landa said helplessly, "There are only 2,000 or 3,000 attacking orcs. They were killed by the cavalry before they could even rush to our city wall." "Then it's okay," a noble asked in disbelief. "It's alright." The next morning, the nobles who climbed up the city wall saw a huge army of orcs. In the center of the orc army was a large army of Black Goat people. They rode majestic black goats, which were their mounts. Cavalry. How can the Black Goat people have cavalry? A noble who had inherited the North Wind province for hundreds of years shouted in fear, with despair in his eyes. Back then, it was because the Black Goat people had cavalry that the North Wind province suffered heavy casualties, but at that time, the Black Goat people's cavalry army was only 5,000. After hearing this, Viscount Landa looked outside with a heavy heart. The Black Goat people's army here would not be less than 5,000. It's over. A noble hurriedly ran down the city wall and ran towards his own manor. He wanted to escape, to the south. Just when some nobles were terrified and wanted to escape, the orc army outside Hanshin City split into two groups, one heading east and the other heading west. The only ones left were the nearly 7,000 or 8,000 Black Goat cavalry and 50,000 Black Goat men. They were so dense that even their eyes were pitch black, which caused great fear to all the soldiers in the city. Are they not going to attack us? Some knights looked at them curiously. This group of Black Goat men did not have the mindless charge of other orcs. Where are those orcs going? Some people wondered about the orcs who left. They actually gave up Hanshin City. Suddenly, a noble trembled all over and pointed at the orc army that was leaving. They are going to our territory. There are many territories of barons and pioneer knights within the defense line of Hanshin County. Although they themselves fled to a safer city with their troops and wealth, it is impossible for them to run away from their territories. They had to leave behind serfs and some relatives and friends. After all, if they were not nobles, it was almost impossible for them to be of the same bloodline. They had relatives, and these people helped the nobles manage their large territories. The nobles fled to the city for refuge, but these people had to take some soldiers and some slaves to resist the harassment and plunder of the orcs in their own territories. Otherwise, their territories would be doomed after the orcs left. Chapter 34, Battle of the Extraordinary Legion. Viscount Landa was also panicked at this moment. As a viscount and the governor of Hanshin County, he had 2,300 soldiers. After the orcs went south, many slaves were temporarily organized into soldiers. For a time, he had 10,000 soldiers. With the establishment of the defense line, all the nobles in Hanshin County sent troops into the city. A baron or pioneer knight could take out 400 to 500 soldiers. Although most of them were slaves, there were 50,000 soldiers in the entire Hanshin City. With 50,000 troops, Viscount Landa was confident that he could defend the city. As long as Hanshin City was safe, he decided that no matter whether there were problems in other counties, he would never send troops out to reinforce. But now there are tens of thousands of Black Goat troops and thousands of Black Goat cavalry. He didn't know whether his city was still safe. Previous orc invasions only plundered the territory around the city. There should be no problem, right? An aristocrat expressed Viscount Landa's thoughts. This was something that all the nobles were afraid of. They were thinking about their own territories before, but now, they have abandoned their territories and started to wonder if they are safe in this city. At that moment, many nobles wanted to escape, regardless of Hanshin County and the territory. As long as they can survive, their territories are still theirs. If they die, they don't know who their territories belong to. No, even if they are Black Goat people, they can't attack the city like this. No matter how powerful the cavalry is, they can't run along the city wall, Viscount Landa said confidently. He wanted to keep these nobles, otherwise the fewer troops there were, the more uneasy he would be. But he suddenly found that as soon as he finished speaking, there was a deathly silence around him. He swallowed his saliva and looked at these native nobles of the North Wind province. The cavalry of the Black Goat people can really climb the wall, some nobles said in despair, and they remembered the records and legends in history. The tribes of the Black Goat people are scattered on the steepest rocks in the north. The majestic Black Goats they breed all eat mosses on the cliffs and even eat antelopes that are similar to them. Just after the noble finished speaking, the Black Goat army outside the city moved. Looking at the crazy charging Black Goat army, Viscount Landa's eyes also revealed desperate fear. In just 3 days, 80% of the Lord's territories in the entire Hanshin County were flooded by orcs. This news was spread to the frozen territory on the 8th day. The 20 Flying Wolf cavalry sent by Earl Winter to Hanshin County were originally used to deliver news, but in the end they became the last straw for Viscount Landa and his men. The news of the Black Goat cavalry also spread throughout the entire North Wind province. Legend has it that only the bravest orc warriors in the Black Goat orc tribe can be blessed by the god Baphomet they worship, thus greatly increasing their strength and being able to control the majestic Black Goats to become warriors. For a tribe of 1,000 people, it would be good to have 30 or 50 Black Goat warriors, 10,000 Ryan is now a little panicked. Could it be that all the Black Goat tribes in the north have been unified? The internal fighting between orcs is much more primitive and barbaric, because many of them have food chain relationships. For example, when the orcs invaded the Northwind province in the south, Ryan believed that the number of orc armies was 700,000 to 800,000, nearly 1 million. But all the way south, the number of these orcs will also drop sharply, such as the lowest ratman or honeypot tribes, which are often eaten up on the road. These orc tribes may become very powerful, but they all have a fatal flaw. That is, in the background of perennial snow and wind, they do not have enough food. Without food, it is impossible to form a large tribe. This is why Ryan didn't understand. How did the Black Goat Man unite from various scattered tribes into a large tribe? There is no point in exploring this now, because tens of thousands of Black Goat Man warriors have appeared in the Northwind province. Hey, Ryan found that he seemed to be not strong enough. Ryan only knew 2 people in the entire Northwind province who could deal with this army of Black Goat Man warriors. I'm afraid they were the only 2. One is the Flying Wolf Cavalry under the governor of the Northwind province, Earl Winter. This cavalry is all composed of giant horned flying wolves with a pair of flesh wings. With 3,000 knights driving flying wolves, the entire Northwind province can be said to be invincible. The other is the 5,000 dragon blood warriors of Earl Soren's family. Legend has it that the ancestors of every dragon blood warrior bathed in the blood of a giant dragon and became a special dragon blood warrior bloodline. They are all famous heavy armored infantry in the entire empire. In the ancient rumors of the Northwind province, the Soren family even worshipped a giant dragon hundreds of years ago. After so many years, the blood of the dragon blood warriors should be getting thinner and thinner, but no matter what, this is a supernatural army. If you don't rely on these 2 families, you will have to pay at least 10 times the price to deal with the Black Goat warriors. And the most terrifying thing is not this. The Black Goat people are intelligent. There must be a large number of Black Goat people on foot guarding around their warrior army. In this case, the Earl of Soren was right at the time. We should take the initiative to attack in the Xiangshan plain, except for the giant city of Bifang in the Northwind province. I'm afraid that the remaining county cities can't stop the pace of the Black Goat people, just as Ryan thought, when tens of thousands of Black Goat warriors appeared in the Northwind province, and many nobles began to gradually understand such a supernatural army. They all began to curse at Viscount Hogg. If they had listened to Earl Soren at the time, the supernatural legions led by the 2 earls would have joined the battle, plus the military strength of the entire province. Maybe they could have buried the Black Goat warriors in the Xiangshan plain. But is it still possible now? Orcs have appeared in various places in the Northwind province. How can they gather troops now? Wherever they gather, other lords will have to give up all their wealth and territory. Count Hunter, Governor, please say something. In Northwind City, Viscount Landa looked at Count Winter angrily, and slapped his palm on the table to print 2 large handprints. He couldn't care whether he would offend Count Winter now. There were still many people in his territory who escaped the pursuit of the orcs and were now hiding in the fortresses in Hanshan City County. Now only if Count Winter dispatched the Flying Wolf Cavalry to eliminate the Black Goat Man Warrior Corps can Hanshan County be recaptured. Viscount Landa, pay attention to your identity. Count Winter looked at Viscount Landa coldly, but he also said that he would not sit idly by. After all, he would eventually bear a lot of responsibility in this matter. So many nobles were killed and injured, and the complaints of these people could be piled up in the Imperial Senate. I will send the Flying Wolf Cavalry to stop the Black Goat warriors, and at the same time, I will send 50,000 soldiers to follow. But now, Muir Solon, that old man, has never replied to me. Earl Winter's eyes were a little cruel. That old man is unwilling to let the Dragon Blood Warrior Corps follow the Flying Wolf Cavalry for protection. How many of my soldiers will die before I can get rid of the Black Goat warriors? Earl Winter roared in a low voice. He was more concerned about the loss of his own army than helping Viscount Landa and those nobles to recover the territory. Viscount Landa looked at Earl Winter, and suddenly, the Viscount calmed down. Want to add money? He understood what Earl Winter meant. Among the nobles, everything was a matter of interest, even if it was to drive away the Black Goat men and recover the Empire's territory. I will persuade Earl Solon to send out the Dragon Blood Warrior Corps. Viscount Landa gritted his teeth and said, he knew that Earl Solon was probably waiting now, just to ask these lords whose lives were threatened to come up with enough benefits. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. we cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, Battle of the Extraordinary Legion. Hearing what Viscount Landa said, Count Winter shook his head. Not enough, that old man is as greedy as a dragon. It's not easy to impress him. He was talking about Count Thoron, but at the same time he told Viscount Landa that what he wanted must not be less than Count Thoron. 1 million gold coins, plus 300,000 kilograms of fine iron. Landa stared at Count Winter and said, 1 million gold coins. The startup funds that the Empire allocates to the Northwind province every year are only this much. 300,000 kilograms of fine iron is also valuable, but for the mineral-rich Northwind province, this deal seems normal. Count Winter looked at Viscount Landa. Do you know how much gold coins my Winter family spends on the army every year, especially on those flying wolf cavalry? If one of them dies, do you know how many gold punks I will lose? Count Winter was really angry. Viscount Landa was only willing to give 1 million gold coins and 300,000 kilograms of fine iron. 600,000 gold coins, plus 150,000 caddies of wrought iron. Viscount Landa lowered his conditions instead, staring at Earl Winter. Each county will be given 600,000 gold coins and 150,000 caddies of wrought iron. I will persuade the remaining counties, but I don't know whether Viscount Hogg and Yinchuan County, the southernmost province, will give it to me. The 7 counties of Bifang province each have at least more than 4 million gold coins, and this number made Earl Winter silent. Although the Empire will give them 1 million gold coins for development every year, this 1 million will be distributed to every noble in the province, and not much will fall into the hands of him, the Earl Governor. The gold coins that can be harvested from the territory of Earl Winter's family and the taxes from Bifang City are only about 1 million each year. When the market is good, it can be more, but when the market is bad, they have to buy food from the south. This is because he is the governor. If he is not the governor, he will at least lose 200,000 or 300,000 gold coins. More than 4 million, divided between him and Earl Soren, is also a huge income, which can make his Flying Wolf Cavalry Corps improve again. The life potions in the Imperial Chamber of Commerce are frighteningly expensive. At the border of the Empire, strength is king. I'll give you 3 days. Go and get those lords to sign the contract. As for Viscount Hogg, you don't have to worry about it. Earl Winter knows a huge secret. Viscount Hogg's ancestor is the illegitimate son of the Grand Duke Myers family. It's less than 600,000 gold coins. I will let them sign, but the Black Oat warriors must be annihilated. I don't want to see you giving you millions of wealth next year. Don't worry, the integrity of the nobles will guide our victory, Earl Winter said confidently. 3 days later, Earl Winter's Flying Wolf Cavalry and 50,000 troops, as well as Earl Soren's Dragon Blood Warrior Heavy Armor Corps and 3,000 cavalry, marched towards Golden Wheat County, where the Black Oat Warrior Corps had arrived. Another half-month passed, and when the Orc army began to attack the Golden Wheat County city, the armies of the 2 earls finally arrived at the battlefield. The war between the Orc army of more than 300,000 and the human army of nearly 100,000 made many soldiers tremble on the battlefield. But such soldiers are destined to die on the battlefield. 3,000 Flying Wolf Cavalry, like fierce birds flying in the sky, and the 5,000 Dragon Blood Warriors in red heavy armor gathered into a square formation and rushed towards the Black Oat army in the center of the Orc army. Ho ha, these stupid humans, they were fooled. In the center of the Orc army, a 3-meter tall Black Oat leader with the most majestic goat mount laughed, and the fine teeth under his ferocious face also emitted a cold light. Go. Kill all these humans. Northwind province is ours. Tens of thousands of Black Goatmen and 7,000 or 8,000 Black Goatmen warriors rushed towards the Dragon Blood Warriors Legion without any rules. No matter how smart the orcs were, they were all bloodthirsty and could not stop fighting. In just 1 minute, the black mass of the orcs rushed to the front of the Dragon Blood Warriors. The collision of blood and flesh caused roars of dragons to appear in the sky. Under the might of the dragon, the walking Black Goatmen following behind the Black Goatmen were terrified, and the Black Goats under the Black Goatmen warriors were trembling, and many of them knelt down directly. On both sides of the battlefield, the orcs were the most affected by the might of the dragon, but the humans also had a lot of commotion. At this moment, the power of the extraordinary legion, kill, the cold light pierced into the bodies of the Black Goatmen warriors on the spear tip, But many of the Black Oatman warriors who were bleeding did not lose their fighting power. Instead, they lost their minds because of the blood, and gained more violent power. They rolled off their mounts, but even when they were standing on the ground, the two scimitars in their hands pierced the gaps in the dragon blood warriors' armor in front of them. Black air permeated many Black Oat men, and the dragon blood warriors in their hands were also violent. One by one, the trainee knights actually burst out with power comparable to that of formal knights. The number of Black Oat warriors was greater than that of dragon blood warriors, and the Black Oat warriors behind them did not lose their mounts. They quickly surrounded the dragon blood warriors, but at this good time, the flying wolf cavalry in the sky, which was affected by the dragon's might, also got rid of the negative effects. One after another, the giant horned flying wolves fell from the sky with great impact force, and the sharp claws easily tore the flesh and blood of the Black Oat men. The knights riding on the back of the flying wolves held spears that were 1 or 2 times longer than their entire bodies, and the huge force directly pierced these Black Oat warriors. After a few breaths, the flying wolves took the cavalry to the sky again. This was the greatest advantage. When to start the fight was decided by those flying in the sky. It can be said that the restraint of the flying wolf cavalry on the Black Oat warriors is fatal, because no matter how sensitive the hands and feet of the orcs are, they are not as sensitive as humans. Those orcs who were bitten by the flying wolves and brought to the sky do not need more means, and they can be smashed to death by dropping them. They can't catch the flying wolf cavalry. Earl Winter is very clear about this, and it is also the reason why he is willing to send troops directly. He believes that his flying wolf cavalry will not have many casualties. On the battlefield, the fighting between the 3 extraordinary legions is undoubtedly the most eye-catching. Their strength is several times that of ordinary soldiers, so that other ordinary orcs and human slave soldiers around dare not approach at all, and many nobles are excited. If I also have such an extraordinary legion, every noble has such an idea in his mind. However, just when everyone was fantasizing, those flying wolf cavalry who flew into the sky and were not ready to rush down for the second time fell from the sky one by one, and screams rang out on the backs of the flying wolves. A powerful noble saw that on the backs of those falling flying wolves, there were blue shadows jumping lightly, and then shuttled towards the distance of the battlefield. Those figures had blue cat heads, but their limbs were more coordinated than any orcs, and they even had a slender rapier on their backs. Assassins? Catmen, some nobles exclaimed. There were actually catman assassins among the orcs in the Northwind province? How could this group of weak catmen have such a terrifying and extraordinary assassin? Chapter 36: The Count and the Assassin. Thundercloud County, where the highest mountain in the Northwind province is located, and every autumn, thunderclouds gather on that mountain. It is hard to imagine that there is an ancient castle on such a mountain that is 300 or 400 meters high. The territory of Earl Loveweiss is here. At the same time, this earl is also the only noble in the Northwind province who is the county governor but does not live in the city of Thundercloud County. He prefers to live in his own earl's castle, where almost no enemies can attack. But more reasons are that Earl Loveweiss has unknown secrets. At this moment, Earl Weiss is braving the wind and snow on the mountain, looking at the distant north, with nostalgia in his eyes. How many years have passed? Who still remembers that the Weiss family is the owner of this land? Before the Pan-Plain War of the Gods, the Northwind province was part of a kingdom called the North Gaul, where it was spring all year round. The former royal family of the North Gaul kingdom was the Weiss family. But the pan-dimensional war of the gods came, following the Lord of Dawn. The kingdom of Beigal also fell into desolation after the war, and all the royal family members died. Later, the winter wind blew from the north, and the nobles kept moving south. The kingdom of Beigal also suffered the impact of the southward army in the process. The kingdom completely declined, and even the Northwind province was occupied by the Grand Duke of Northwind. Loveweiss was not a direct descendant of the royal family of the former kingdom. He was just a remote branch of the family. But even if he was a branch, he was still recognized as a nobleman under the name of the Weiss family. In those days, Grand Duke Myers attacked the Northwind province. Weiss saw the opportunity. He was the first to surrender to the Empire, and with the help of the Empire's guard and the soldiers he got, Loveweiss became one of the 3 earls of the Northwind province. But no one expected that in the process of becoming an earl, Count Weiss crossed the Xiangshan Plain into the northern border, and he found the property left by the former kingdom of Beigal. The kingdom has only 2 assets. One is the crown, which contains the divinity of a thunder giant that was captured by the Northern Gar kingdom in the War of Gods. That war caused the Northern Gar Kingdom to lose more than 70% of its army, which led to a series of results. The second legacy is the training method of the Catman assassins that the Northern Gar Kingdom's royal family likes to cultivate the most. During the wars in the Range of Gods, the internal struggles of the various kingdoms on the continent can be said to be fierce. Assassins are the most efficient and least costly way. Count Weiss is very smart. Perhaps he is the first to put such a low-profile group as assassins into the war. But the effect is remarkable. With the help of the Catman assassins, the Black Goat warriors should be able to inflict heavy casualties on those two guys. Ha 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 ha. Count Weiss holds a glass of red wine in his hand. This is something from the south of the Empire. It is said that a lot of grain is needed to brew it. The Empire has so many good things. What a pity. Weiss's eyes flashed with struggle, but soon his eyes became extremely firm. An earl is only an earl after all. I want to be the king of the North Wind Province. His eyes became fanatical. And the crown on his head showed his ambition. He wanted the North Wind Province to be completely defeated in the process of blocking the invasion of orcs this year, and let the North Wind Province be ravaged by orcs. In that way, he can use the connections he has built in the Empire over the years to promote that matter again. Many nobles in the Empire do not think that the North Wind Province is valuable. They have proposed to cut off the North Wind Province several times. In fact, Weiss also knows the thoughts of those nobles. They are for the benefit of the Wing Canyon. As long as the North Wind Province is the territory of the Empire, the significance of the existence of the Wing Canyon is extremely tasteless. Some nobles in the Empire, such as Grand Duke Myers, proposed to send the troops of the Wing Canyon to the Xiangshan Plain of the North Wind Province for garrison. This is the political struggle within the Empire about the northeast corner, but obviously, Grand Duke Myers lost. But the other nobles did not win either. The North Wind Province was proposed to be cut off by them many times, but to no avail. As one of the 4 Grand Dukes of the Empire, Myers also has strong connections. This was not on the interests of Count Weiss at all. He wanted to restore his country. He wanted the North Wind Province to become his kingdom, the Kingdom of Weiss. As long as the North Wind Province was the territory of the Empire, he would not dare to do so. So the first thing to do was to let the Empire give up the North Wind Province and make it completely a no-man's land. At that time, how could the 2 counts who had even suffered heavy casualties in the Extraordinary Corps be the opponents of Count Weiss? Thinking of this, Count Weiss could not help but get excited. There was even a trace of lightning on him. As long as the North Wind Province is defeated, the Empire will see that millions of gold coins are wasted every year. It will need more gold coins to rebuild the North Wind Province. 1 million gold coins per year is definitely not enough. At least 3 million or 5 million per year. Those great nobles will never agree, and even the royal family will hesitate. When the North Wind Province is cut off by the Empire, it will belong to me, to love Weiss. Count Weiss laughed. For the sake of his dream of a kingdom, it would not be impossible even if the cat assassin helped the orcs. But he still couldn't help but feel uneasy. Count Winter's Flying Wolf Cavalry was an extremely rare flying troop. There were only a few corps in the Empire that could fly in the sky. Appia, you cat assassins, you won't let me down, right? Count Weiss couldn't help but say, and in the shadow of the forest behind him, a blue cat assassin jumped out. My lord, once we cat assassins lock on to our target, we will never fail, never? You failed once last year, Count Weiss snorted coldly. You can't even kill a child, and you still dare to say that you never fail. If the Baron of the Clayton family died in the North Wind Province, would I, the Earl, have to make a deal with those stupid orcs? If the boy of the Clayton family died in the territory, the Empire should re-examine the value of the North Wind Province at the end of the year, and it can also drag that Earl Clayton and the royal family into the water. In that case, even if Grand Duke Myers doesn't want to give up the North Wind Province, he will face tremendous pressure and have to compromise. Appia lowered his head. He didn't know why the mission failed. The assassin who came back told him that the boy couldn't die again. Then sir, are we going to carry out another assassination? I guarantee that it won't fail this time. The huge force carrying thunder fell on the thin cat man, and Earl Weiss looked at the catman slave with a gloomy expression. Now that Earl Clayton has returned to the Empire, do you want to involve a powerful Earl in the North? It's too late to kill him now. You'd better pray that the extraordinary training methods of you cat assassins will not let this war go where I don't want to see. Follow your will. Appia knelt on the ground in fear. Chapter 37 Terribly Strong. Assassin, When Ryan of the Frozen Territory received the news, it was accompanied by the defeat of the Flying Wolf Cavalry and the death and injury of more than 1,500 Dragon Blood warriors. Less than 2,000 of Earl Winter's Flying Wolf Cavalry were left. If it weren't for Nengfei and the Knights' reaction, there would be more casualties. As for the Dragon Blood warriors, due to the lack of mobility, the loss was greater. More than half of the Black Oat warriors also died, but the remaining 3,000 orc warriors would still scare the nobles of the Northwind province. His eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the assassin described in the letter. The cat people with blue hair all over their bodies, they can hold rapiers like humans, hide in the shadows, and hit the target with one strike. Finally found you. Ryan did not forget that his original body was killed by an assassin. Who among the orcs can bully the weak cat people? Who can have such a powerful supernatural power? In Ryan's mind, the cat people themselves, Earl Winter and Earl Soren, were first excluded. The extraordinary armies of the two earls suffered heavy losses. How could they have directed and acted out the incident themselves? The orcs couldn't have been possible either. If the orcs had such a brain, they could be self-sufficient in the north. Why would they invade the south? Among the remaining options, the nobles in the south of the empire couldn't have been possible either, because if they wanted to send so many assassins to the Northwind province, it would be impossible for them to have no information at all. So it could only be the nobles in the Northwind province. Count Loveweiss is the most likely one. Other qualified viscounts, Viscount Miles, should not be possible. If there was such an assassin force, Viscount Dragon would have died long ago. There aren't many answers. Ryan stood on the opposite side of all the nobles and thought about the answer. In the end, it fell on Count Weiss. This earl was the most suspicious. If it was really Count Weiss, then this earl might also have extraordinary armies under his command. Back to the situation of the entire North Border province, Ryan knew that many people in the Northwind province might not be able to get through this winter. But what Ryan didn't expect was that the first person who couldn't get through was Viscount Miles. After the Black Goat warriors fought a draw with the two earls' extraordinary armies in Golden Wheat County, they actually brought tens of thousands of Black Goat warriors to Lingdu County. It must be said that the Miles family is worthy of being a noble family that has been passed down for hundreds of years, and they still have a lot of family assets. At the critical moment, they took out more than a dozen spell scrolls, causing more than 1,000 casualties in the Black Goat warriors. That Viscount Miles was actually a great magician, one step away from being a wizard. This incident shocked many people in the Northwind province, especially Viscount Dragon, who was extremely fortunate that this old guy was about to die. In the subsequent attacks, the Black Goat man ravaged most of Lingdu County, and more than half of the nobles suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, Lingdu City was not breached, and the nobles themselves were not in any danger. It became the only county in the Northwind province where no nobles died. By then, the orcs were still rampaging. When the extraordinary army suffered heavy losses, Earl Winter and Earl Solon had already transferred them back to their own earldoms, and were unwilling to come out to deal with the Black Goat warriors. However, because of Viscount Miles, this extraordinary orc army also suffered a bit of losses. The remaining Black Goat army no longer targeted those cities, but dispersed to plunder the castles and manors of small nobles. Speaking of which, the reason why Lingdu County was besieged by the Black Goat army had something to do with Ryan. The Black Goat was confident in their wisdom, so they sent scouts to the south to find out which noble had the most food. But at that time, Ryan sold this news to Viscount Miles. As a result, Viscount Miles in Lingdu City and those chambers of commerce that followed suit began to buy food on a large scale, and sent all the surplus food to Lingdu City to pile up in preparation for a big war fortune. This naturally could not be hidden from the Black Goat scouts who came to find it. As a result, the Black Goat tribe attacked Lingdu City. In short, now the defense line of the Northwind province has become a joke, and everyone is fighting on their own in counties. Then half a month later, news came that another county city was broken by the orcs. This time, there was no Flying Wolf cavalry to pick up the people. The entire city, including dozens of nobles including Viscount Skinner, was wiped out. As soon as the news came out, all the nobles in the Northwind province could not sit still. So many nobles died, not to mention that the lips and teeth were cold and the teeth were broken. They could not explain to the Empire at all. Count Winter's Flying Wolf Cavalry and Count Soren's Dragon Blood Warrior Legion gathered again and began to hunt down the Black Goat Warrior Legion, but in fact, it was the ordinary cavalry that really fought against the Orc warriors. Only cavalry could catch up with the Black Goat men. The Flying Wolf cavalry had poor endurance, and by the time they arrived at the battlefield, they were already in the middle and late stages. Fortunately, after more than 20 days of pursuit, most of the remaining 2,000 Black Goat warriors were killed or injured, and at least half of the nearly 100,000 Black Goat men in the entire Northwind province died. Other orcs suffered even worse losses, but population was a burden to the orc tribes. They went south to steal food and reduce population. The territory of the Northwind province, which was constantly shining, finally ushered in February of the following year. The orcs began to retreat gradually, and the human lords began to fight back and hunt down the orcs. It was not because of anger and dignity, but because the orcs took away too much wealth that should have belonged to them when they returned to the north, and they wanted to take back their wealth. In the process of chasing the orcs, Ryan's frozen land territory finally had the opportunity to participate. However, unlike the pursuit of other nobles, he was blocking. Absolutely no orcs that are threatening will be allowed to enter my territory. Brand, assemble the army, find all the orcs in the mountains for me, kill all those who resist, and make the captured ones slaves. Ryan rode his warhorse on the plains under the Rhinohorn mountain. As the temperature rose, the snow here was gradually melting, and he could finally see a little color of life in his territory. With nearly 100 soldiers and 700 or 800 serfs, Ryan also claimed to be a 1,000-man army and began to sweep the surrounding mountains. By the way, record the maps in all directions. How fierce and brutal the orcs were when they invaded from the south, how timid and fragile they are now when they are full and have food. Facing the encirclement and suppression of humans, they don't think about fighting desperately, but running away and hiding. This made Ryan speechless, and he kept picking up bargains. The orc slaves in the frozen land gradually changed from 300 or 400 to 800 or 900, and then to more than 1,000. Another half a month passed, and when the snow on the land of the Northwind province was almost melted, Ryan could hardly find orcs returning to the north around the frozen land. At this time, the number of orc slaves under his command had exceeded 2,000. So many orcs made some people in the frozen land panic, so Ryan couldn't take time to go to the other plain. With the idea that food should not be wasted, Ryan waved his hand and directly handed over the previously explored route to these orc slaves. Send them to clear the way, and remember to find a place to pile up the excavated soil. Since we can't find a suitable arable land, we will create arable land ourselves. Don't be polite to those orcs, use them to death. Orcs eat more than humans. Ryan didn't dare to think if none of these orcs died, his granary could not last for a month. Thinking of the granary, Ryan's eyes fell on the tall silos under the Rhinohorn mountain, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. He also had to thank these orcs for going to his side when they returned, so that he could harvest more than 2,000 orc slaves, more than 20,000 gold coins and more than 200,000 kilograms of food, as well as various crafts and gemstones and other luxury goods. In an instant, Master Ryan's pocket bulged again. Riding on a warhorse to patrol his territory, Ryan was actually still waiting. He wanted to see if the assassin who assassinated him would assassinate him again because of the failure of the mission. So there was no one around him now, and Brand didn't follow him. Because Ryan found that he was terribly strong now. The hand holding the reins clenched slightly, and the warhorse under him couldn't help but shudder for a moment, even though it had endured such a terrifying breath many times in the past few days. Ryan's nostrils breathed in the burning breath. Even leather would soften if it touched it, and if there was dry firewood in front of it, it could even be ignited directly. Ryan tried it, and his strength was so strong that he could even lift a millstone over his head with one hand without feeling any pressure. The reason for all this was somewhat magical, that is, the flame dragon knight breathing method of the Clayton family that he practiced broke through to the level of a formal knight. It was strange that he had already had the physique of a formal knight, but he could actually break through for the second time. It was as if the physique increase brought by the deer spirit blessing on his spiritual panel, and the deer spirit knight breathing method that he could also practice, had no overlap with the flame dragon knight breathing method, and he could even practice these two breathing methods at the same time. But after Ryan experimented for a few days, he found some differences. That is his body. He may still be practicing the flame dragon knight breathing method instinctively, but the auxiliary effect brought by the spiritual panel allows him to practice the second breathing method. The two methods do not conflict at all. It's just that Ryan's physique has long been at the level of a formal knight, so when the breathing method breaks through this time, the increase in physique is not much. More importantly, It is the increase in the soul level brought by the Flame Dragon Night breathing method. After the breakthrough, Ryan felt like a giant beast at the top of the food chain. Anyone who faces him will be afraid from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of influence in battle can reduce the enemy's strength a lot, so that it is easy to win. In short, the 5 or 6 knights in the territory except Brand are not Ryan's opponents. Chapter 38: A Winter's Late Property. The weather was getting warmer. Ryan stood on the peak of Rhinohorn Mountain and looked into the distance. There were already many places without snow. There were no soldiers in the territory now, because they were all sent to supervise the slaves to build roads. Opening mountains and digging roads is an extremely dangerous thing. Many orcs died and injured in this month. But the more they died, the faster the road was built. The resistance Ryan guessed did not happen once. I don't know if the soldiers' whips were painful enough or because he gave those slaves a lot of food. I don't know if a complete road can be built before all these orcs die. Ryan stood on Rhinohorn Mountain and looked to the south. He could already see a large gap in the forest, which was the direction leading to the Northwind province. When Ryan stood on the mountain and watched, the figure of Viscountess Whitman gradually approached. In this still somewhat cold wind, the Viscountess, whose belly was gradually getting bigger, was also trembling. "Why is Madam here?" Ryan asked. Considering his meditation talent, the value of this Viscountess plummeted, and he arranged for her to teach the maids to read and count. "Lord Ryan, I want to move down the mountain." "Oh? Why? You still have to teach them knowledge, and it's troublesome to live down the mountain." As a nobleman, Ryan still respected the Viscountess. His initial irritation gradually calmed down during the period of time when he was dealing with the orc slaves. At this moment, looking at the Viscountess with a slightly bulging belly and becoming more charming because of her pregnancy, Ryan almost instinctively wanted to refuse. The Viscountess didn't know what to say. The weather has warmed up recently, and she has gone down the mountain several times. She always hears some embarrassing rumors. "I'm on the mountain, and I'm not good for your reputation, Lord Ryan." Before Ryan could say anything, the old butler, Beard, who was not far away, said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Madam is right. Young Master Ryan is going to get married. It's spring, and the caravans from the south are gradually heading north. Let's avoid rumors. I'll have someone build a small manor at the nearest location at the foot of the mountain. Madam, you can live there. If young Master Ryan wants to meditate on magic, it's also close to the mountain." Hearing Beard's words, the Viscountess's face turned hot, but Ryan didn't have much to say. After the Viscountess left, Ryan looked at the old butler. "How are those children? Can they learn?" Beard nodded. Since the population of the territory has increased, the old butler has become more and more unable to do it alone. Ryan also directly asked him to select a group of smart and clever teenagers and teach them to read and write, especially arithmetic. After Ryan's personal changes, those teenagers have made great progress. Hey, this kind of thing should have been handed over to the Clayton family, who are willing to follow Master Ryan to the north. That way they would be trustworthy. Now it's the peasants who have gotten the upper hand. Master Ryan, you don't know that every time these peasants know they have to teach them new knowledge, they can't wait to carve the words on their hands with a chisel. Being studious is a good thing. Ryan smiled, not caring about the spread of knowledge to civilians. This way you can be more relaxed. Spring is here. And your body is not as good as when we first came to the frozen land, Alice. Beard sighed. I would rather die of exhaustion than let those peasants have the opportunity to interfere in Master Ryan's territory. Don't worry, they are very loyal to me, and they can't be my stewards. That's Beard's. Ryan smiled. Indeed very loyal. The entire frozen land, including the slaves, there is no one who is not loyal, because the Northwind province has been a mess for more than a month. At this time, every time Ryan gave food, those slaves could cry out. The smart young men selected by Beard were selected from the most loyal among the loyal. Hearing what Ryan said, Beard was also a little excited, but then he couldn't help but worry. That kid was detained in Fie Canyon, and I don't know if he is dead or not. Fie Canyon has been safe for so many years, it's not so easy for people to die. Ryan patted old Beard on the shoulder. I have sent people to find him. If Beard is still alive, I will definitely bring him here. When Ryan came to Bifang province from the imperial capital, he had less and less money and less manpower along the way. The old housekeeper's son, Little Beard, was also detained in Fie Canyon. As the road construction continued, time also came to the day of spring plowing. There were fewer and fewer people left in the villages and towns under the Rhino Horn Mountain. Those civilians had stayed in the fields all night, and they had to fight for every piece of bird shit that fell from the sky. In Bifang province, countless displaced people either became slaves or returned to their homes and found that they had nothing. For a time, the whole province was filled with wailing. I am afraid that in the coming days, more and more people will become slaves. The more slaves there are, the lower the price will be. The chambers of commerce in the empire are like vultures seeing a rotten corpse. They arrived in the North Wind province more than half a month earlier today. What a coincidence for Ryan. Following these caravans to the North Wind province, there are also a group of people related to him. Master Ryan, I finally see you, in the frozen land. A boy who seemed to have no chance to wash his hair and was 1 or 2 years older than Ryan ran towards Ryan crying. It was the son of the old housekeeper, Littlebeard. Are you released? Ryan was a little surprised, because according to his calculations, the people he arranged should not have arrived at the Wing Canyon yet. Thanks to Master Ryan, the masters of the Clayton family brought me out together. Ryan only saw the team behind Beard at this time. There were hundreds of majestic war horses, with flowing manes like scarves tied by women's hair. These were not Highland war horses, but grassland horses from the south, which did not belong to the Empire. There were also 20 carriages, each with 7 or 8 oak boxes. Judging from the weight of the wheels, they should be made of iron or something. Of course, one of the carriages was not for transporting goods, but for the nobles to travel. The tall wheels were actually covered with a layer of silver edges, and the surface of the carriage was engraved with expensive magic circles, like red roses with restrained light. The 2 white horses pulling the carriage made Ryan unable to open his eyes. They were magic beasts. Magic beasts, no matter how weak the magic beasts were. They were at least comparable to bronze knights because they had mastered magic power. Formal knights needed to form a group to hunt. In addition to these things, there were 150 soldiers wearing armor and holding spears guarding next to them, and the 5 heirs from the Clayton family who led them. That is what the old housekeeper said, the people who can really be trusted to help him manage the territory, but these people are obviously more suitable for the army. 5 people, all of them are bronze knights, and they also practice the flame dragon night breathing method of the Clayton family. Master Ryan, the Earl has ordered us to hand over your soldiers and wealth to you. A total of 50,000 gold coins, 10 sets of enchanted mithril armor, 100 knight spears, 100 knight armors, 500 kilograms of grain seeds, 1,500 pieces of linen, and the mammoth wool cloak brought back by the Earl from the depths of the north, a Clayton family carriage, 150 knight attendants, and 5 Clayton family knights. Chapter 39, Bran's Power. Hearing Harrington Clayton's voice, Ryan couldn't help but take a deep breath. He had spent months trying hard, but the wealth he had was not even half of the value of this team. Is this the terrible wealth that the most powerful noble families in the Empire can have? Ryan believed that these things were owned by every baron from the Clayton family, and they could surpass 90% of the barons in the Empire, but they were insignificant to the entire Earl Clayton family. With these things, even if a baron was corrupt and prodigal, when he died, the baron's territory would still be a powerful baron's territory, and it would never decline. Things worth 200,000 gold coins were placed in front of Ryan, but Ryan was not very excited. He would get these things sooner or later by himself. But it must be said that it would take a lot of time to get them by himself, and it was different from appearing in front of him immediately now. And when he saw these things, Ryan knew that his status had changed. Not only in the aristocratic circle of the Empire, but also in the aristocratic circle of the North Wind province. Because these things appeared in Baron Ryan's territory, it meant that Earl Clayton, who had returned to the Empire, accepted the result that the nobles of the Empire had forced him to die for his merits before he came back. He had traveled thousands of miles to the north, smashed a tribe of mammoth people, and brought back divine merits, a baron seat, and a baron seat in the North Wind province. Earl Clayton was not going to care about it. Then Ryan Clayton, who was originally mediocre and ignored among the descendants of Earl Clayton, had a different status at this moment. He was not just a baron, but the baron position was under pressure, but a huge amount of merit. Thinking of this, Ryan suddenly raised his head and laughed, looking at the bright sunshine. He would tell those nobles that this baron would be the most wrong decision in their political struggle. Harrington Clayton was a little shocked, not only him, but also the 4 other Claytons next to him. Before they came, They knew that Ryan Clayton was the most obscure of the Earl's dozen children, and his territory, the Frozen Territory, was the northernmost frontier of the Empire. In the northern border, it was covered by winter and snow, and there was no room for development. They had already prepared for the worst. After all, no one in the Clayton family dared to refute the Earl, not to mention that they were just servants of the Earl with the surname Clayton. But it seemed that the development of the Frozen Territory was much better than they imagined. Moreover, the training ground where the military camp was located was made of the best wood. The iron hooves of the Highland war horses and the horse farms used were also carefully selected soil, not just a piece of land that would cause the war horses to wear out severely. And the iron tools used for training were very careful, and should be strictly supervised products. What surprised Harrington the most was the iron armor hanging in the middle of the wall. The armor was more sophisticated than the ones he wore. From the perspective of his noble family education, he could tell the location of each joint. It was composed of many parts, which made the knight's joints more flexible when fighting. There was also the chain-mail inner armor at the chest position, which was like a fine fishing net. While ensuring defense, it did not cause chest tightness and depression like other armor. The knight's heart was the most active, and this design was more suitable for the knight than any other armor. As for the helmet, it left a cross gap on the visor that could not be seen. The moment Harrington saw the armor, he felt awe. It was as if the majestic and solemn knight was standing in front of him. There shouldn't be many such armors, Harrington said with some fear. Of course not. For a whole month and a half, 10 blacksmiths hammered together, and only one pair was made. A voice suddenly came from the back, and Harrington and his men turned around abruptly. They didn't even notice it. Brand folded his hands and looked at Harrington and his 5 men. The Lord said that you will be the commanders of my soldiers in the future. I want to see what you can do. What? Harrington's face flushed when he heard Brand's voice. He came to the Frozen Territory, and the Baron of the Clayton family could not become the highest commander of the army? In an instant, the humiliation and the dignity of the knight made him unbearable, and he drew the long sword at his waist. I want to duel with you, a fight to the death. Forget about a fight to the death. You are also Clayton, and the Lord will definitely not want you to die. After Brand finished speaking, he walked outside. If any of you 5 can beat me, the position of the Legion commander will be yours. On the Rhino Horn Mountain, Ryan looked at the battle in the military camp below the mountain with interest, which was watched by the 150 soldiers who had just arrived. Do you think they can win? Old Beard and Little Beard both stood behind Ryan. The old butler smiled but said nothing, but Little Beard was a little hesitant. Mr. Harrington and the others are all knights trained by the Clayton family, and they also practice the Flame Dragon Knight breathing method. They shouldn't lose, right? He didn't even know where that Brand came from. Really? Ryan said with a smile, staring at the battle below without moving. Come. The stag spirit roared, and Brand's bloody fighting spirit was boiling. He was not afraid of the fiery red fighting spirit that was like a blazing flame, and he smashed Harrington with the huge power of his fists. Flame dragon breathing. A light breath spewed out from Harrington's mouth and nose, and it was like the breath of a giant dragon at the same time. His skin was dark, not to mention that there was a pair of flesh and blood fists in front of him. Even if it was a large metal shield, he was not afraid. The 2 huge forces collided with each other, and both were a little surprised. Brand was surprised that someone could have the same strength as him, but Harrington was different. He was shocked that Brand's strength was the same as his. You know, the Flame Dragon Knight breathing method holds the ultimate goal, forging a knight into a human-shaped giant dragon. The guy in front of him, whose origin was unknown, could actually be on par with him. The next moment, Harrington found out that he was wrong. Because the next moment, he found that Brand retreated more than 10 meters, and then rushed towards him with a loud roar. At that moment, he seemed to see a ferocious stag rushing towards him, which was not the appearance of a grazing deer at all. After a dizzying moment, Harrington was helped up from the ground. Everyone looked at Brand, who was standing in the distance with boiling blood and rage, in shock. Is it the deer spirit breathing technique that is so strong? Ryan thinks not. It is Brand himself who is strong. If another knight who practices the deer spirit breathing technique comes over, he will definitely not be a match for Harrington. You are worthy of being my guardian knight. Chapter 40 The Dying Plane. All of a sudden, with more than 200 soldiers, Ryan found that his food pressure seemed to be a little bigger. But his courage also became a little bigger. In the barren castle, Ryan, with the help of the old and young Beard, put on the mithril armor in front of him little by little. Suddenly, a majestic and powerful knight with no gaps on his body stood in the room. Ryan did not feel that his vision was blocked at all. Mithril has a powerful effect of isolating magic, but at the same time, mithril itself is a powerful magic material. These two statements are not inconsistent with mithril. Forbidden magic, mithril can block 90% of the spell damage below the Great Magician. Magic materials, spells carved and solidified on mithril, can play a 200% effect. This mithril armor has 3 magic effects: Eagle Eyes, Strength Increase and Burst. It's very simple and powerful. Eagle's Eyes can let him see more than 1,000 meters away. Strength Enhancement can make him have the strength comparable to that of a bronze knight at the knight stage. Explosion can make the bronze knight or higher knight with fighting spirit burst 120% of its fighting spirit. This set of mithril armor is worth 100,000 gold coins. The remaining 9 sets only have the effects of Eagle's Eyes and Strength Enhancement, and the value is about 5,000 to 7,000. But this is the price in the imperial capital, where there are countless powerful magicians and alchemists, as well as various powerful extraordinary people. So Ryan said that the property sent by the Earl is worth 200,000 gold coins. The knight is the price for the Earl's family, and the price for other nobles is unknown. And the carriage, there is no record of its sale at all, because it was prepared by the Clayton family for the nobles of their family, and the cost was only a few thousand gold coins. The significance of a few thousand gold coins is that most of the materials are produced by the Clayton family. Give 1 set of the rest to Brands and the 5 Clintons each. Ryan was so generous that the old butler was shocked. Master Ryan, this is absolutely not possible. The value of a set of mithril armor is something they can't buy even if they risk their lives. The old butler was sweating profusely. How could he just give it away? After thinking about it, Ryan found that he seemed to be too relaxed about this free thing. The last time he went to Lingdu City, he sold all the valuables for only more than 4,000 gold coins. Indeed, the mithril armor is still too expensive for the bronze knights. This should be something that only the silver knights would think about. I'm floating, Ryan reminded himself. He suddenly got a large sum of money, and he really didn't know how to use it. It seems that he needs to reflect on himself in the future. Forget it, tell them that at the end of this year, a military competition will be held, and the most powerful knight in the territory will receive a mithril armor. Although he reflected on it, Ryan didn't think of keeping this kind of war material as a collection. By the way, Beard, Ryan looked at Little Beard. I'll give you a task. Northwind Province is now in a mess after being plundered by orcs. I'll give you an army of 100 soldiers and 300 serfs. Go to Northwind Province to buy slaves. Priority will be given to those craftsmen who can raise horses and forge iron, followed by serfs who grow crops and fruit trees. And finally those slaves who can do a little bit of everything but can't do anything. Especially those slaves who stay in those mines all year round. We don't want any of them. By the way, we are building roads now, and there should be a lot of orc slaves in Northwind Province, so we'll buy some of them back. 30,000 gold coins, you decide. By the way, Ryan handed the discount card of Irina, the steward of Blade Rose, to Beard. Follow your will. Beard trembled all over. He had never managed so many gold coins before, and he couldn't help feeling a little dizzy, but at the same time he made up his mind to spend these gold coins one by one to get the effect of 2. After Little Beard left, the old butler couldn't help but hesitate. He was also a little excited, because even he had never managed so many gold coins. Master Ryan, I'm afraid this kid won't be able to do the job. I believe he can do it. Ryan believed in the education of the nobles for the butlers and servants, which must have been from childhood to adulthood. In addition, he also wanted to see this Little Beard, whether his future butler was capable or not. You have to know that the future of his master Ryan was definitely not limited to this. What was a few tens of thousands of gold coins? If these tens of thousands of gold coins were handled in a mess, Beard might not be able to do the job of the butler of the frozen land in the future. Go find Brand, Ryan ordered. The old butler knew that Master Ryan was going to open the door to the plane again. Brand brought 10 soldiers and Harrington's 5 Brand's knights, and then had the same expression as the others back then. Harrington and others were extremely excited. Ryan didn't think about hiding his power, but thanks to the special times and the location of the frozen land, his secrets were not exposed at all. Frozen land, we came to the right place. Harrington and the others looked at each other and saw the enthusiasm in their eyes. For people like them who cannot become nobles, only by following a lord with a bright future can their future be unlimited. Then, the next moment, The biting cold wind extinguished the boiling in their eyes. "Hiss, why is it so cold? Shouldn't it be warmer?" The moment he arrived at the Exner continent, Ryan was confused. He clearly remembered that this plane had the same spring and autumn as his world, but why was it still freezing cold here when the snow in his frozen land had melted? The War of the Gods has completely plunged this plane into the dead silence of eternal winter. Brand was a little depressed. After all, this was his hometown, a world with countless stories he was familiar with. It seems that this world is not far from death, Ryan sighed, not knowing whether it was because he received the deer spirit. In short, this world has fallen into the death of eternal winter. Even a knight like him who practiced a breathing method of the flame dragon knight could not bear such a cold winter, so how could those ordinary people survive? The food they stored in their tents, villages or castles might be their last time limit. There are lights in the building ahead. Ryan was wearing mithril armor and could see far away. Even the wind and snow could not block his vision. He saw a tall tower, which seemed to be the territory of a noble. Ryan saw some lights flickering in the wind and snow. Facing such a dying world, Ryan had no scruples. He controlled the passage of life here, and perhaps it was the only passage. Chapter 41, Many Nobles. A group of more than a dozen people walked in the wind and snow, and soon came to the front of the tower. It was a manor. The lights flickered in the window, and it was obvious that someone had discovered them, but it was too cold outside and no one was willing to go out. Bang, bang, bang. Brand slammed the heavy wooden door hard. The door had not been opened for an unknown period of time, and ice chips were scattered all over the ground under gravity. No need to shout, just go in. As Brand broke into the door, they did not suffer any attacks. Walking into the courtyard of this manor fortress with a Gothic style, when facing the first floor door inside, the power of the bronze knight was useless this time. What a clever design, with a few buckles, the heavy door can be locked. Ryan had just finished speaking when he heard a voice from behind the door. "We have no food, you go. We are not here to ask for food, we will bring you warmth and food." Who knew that after hearing Brand's words, the faces of the people inside changed drastically. "Are you cultists?" "What cultists?" Brand was a little confused. "We are not cultists. Open the door. We are just a few people." "What are you afraid of?" Ryan walked forward and said in a heavy voice, "I am Viscount Whitman." "Open the door." Then in just a few breaths, the door opened. Looking at Ryan's figure, the face of the person who opened the door changed drastically. "You are not Viscount Whitman." For a moment, more people came up around. They all had weapons in their hands, but it was obvious that they were not very skilled and their weapons were a little unstable. "Although I am not Viscount Whitman, I am also a noble." Ryan put his hand on the visor, and the next moment he took off a prismatic mithril visor, revealing a face that was not ordinary. "You," the young man who spoke hesitated, but still said, "I will take you to see the Baron and others." After walking through several closed doors, Ryan found that the surroundings were obviously much brighter, and there were soldiers guarding, although they looked listless. Finally, Ryan met many nobles here in a restaurant. Yes, there are not one noble here, but 8. They are well dressed and their hair is neatly combed, but the paste in the exquisite silver plate in front of them is still not in line with their status. Mashed potatoes. Ryan was a little surprised. He actually saw potatoes. In an instant, his whole body became warm. This thing should be very resistant to cold. Feeling Ryan's eager gaze, these people thought they were coming to rob them of food, and they all accelerated their actions. Only after finishing the food on the plate did these noble barons finally look at Ryan. "Who are you? I never knew that there was a noble like you in any manor around." "I am Ryan, the Baron of the Frozen Land. You all don't seem to be doing well." Ryan looked at these barons. Obviously, under the eternal winter, they could only huddle together for warmth. "Humph, can you live well? In this damn weather, can you still light a fireplace?" "Fireplace? It's a good suggestion. How could I forget this?" "Maybe, it's really possible." Ryan looked at these nobles and asked directly, "How many of you are here?" "What do you mean?" a baron asked. "I can take you away from this deadly weather, but let me make it clear first, if you leave here, you will lose all your noble status. From now on, you are just a commoner." However, this group of people seemed to have not heard the second half of his words. They opened their eyes wide and came to Ryan. "Can you really take us to the city of the magic furnace in the south? Take me away quickly, and I will give you gold coins, 10,000 gold coins. I have gems here, all for you, as long as you take me to the south." "Stop," Ryan interrupted everyone's chattering. "Come one by one, What price are you willing to pay? But first, don't you introduce yourselves." After Ryan finished speaking, the nobles in front of him seemed to have regained their demeanor. "I am Baron Yaz." "Yaz? Who is Viscountess Whitman to you?" Ryan asked. "Sala? You saw Sala. How is she now? Is she doing well?" "She is not bad. She has a yard where she can grow flowers and plants, and she doesn't have to bear the attack of the cold wind." "Okay, that's good." Baron Yaz relaxed and trusted Ryan a little more. After listening to the introductions of all the barons, Ryan continued, "The place I am taking you to is not the south, but another world. That is my territory. After you get there, all your identities will be meaningless. No one will recognize you as nobles, even if you do look like nobles. At most, they will treat you as wandering nobles, but wandering nobles are not much better than civilians, so you must understand that if you want to survive, you are no longer nobles. Everyone here will become my people, including the soldiers who originally belonged to you." After listening to what Ryan said, the nobles here did not react for a long time. In the end, Baron Yaz was the first to come to his senses. "Are you telling the truth? I don't need to lie to you, and your daughter is in my territory. You can see her too." "Okay, I promise you, I will live as a commoner in your territory, but you can't take away my surname." "Okay," Ryan nodded, but he couldn't just believe them. "Then, swear in the name of the Lord of the Dawn." "I don't know if the Lord of the Dawn will get here, but in the world where the Empire is, in the place where the Lord of the Dawn shines, the price of breaking the oath is definitely more terrible than death." Hearing Ryan's words, a baron couldn't help but refute. "You can't deprive us of the right to become nobles. I ask you to keep our identity as wandering nobles. My territory doesn't need wandering nobles. Wandering nobles mean that they may win over people's hearts. What if the common people believe that they can rise and follow them? This is what Ryan doesn't want to see. We are all apprentices of mages. How can we become commoners like those mud-legged peasants? We are born noble." Ryan looked at these people helplessly. "Forget it. Let's each take a step back. I will not allow you to live in my territory as nobles, so you must take an oath. But if you can pay enough, I can give you a piece of wasteland in the territory and allow you to build your own manor and farmland there. However, you must pay taxes on your manor and harvest. This is my bottom line. I will make you rich. As for your unwillingness to give up your noble status, have you ever thought about who knows your noble status in another world, except me? Who knows your origins? No one will care where you come from. If you say you are a noble, no one will think it is true, and if you become the owner of the manor, it means that you are qualified to recruit servants, guards and slaves. In the future, you can have more opportunities to obtain noble titles than commoners through the efforts of your own family." Hearing Ryan's words, the 8 barons were silent, but with Baron Yaz taking the lead in taking the oath, they all agreed to Ryan's suggestion. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Potatoes. After everyone swore to give up their noble status, Ryan suddenly looked at these people. "According to the oath you just made, swear to the stag spirit of the Exner continent." Although they didn't understand the reason, Baron Yaz and others still did it. Ryan looked at his spiritual panel. Well, no reaction. With the oath witnessed by the Lord of Dawn, these people would not have the power to resist him in their own territory. Ryan looked at the soldiers and maids around him. "You should have heard it too. Now you are my soldiers and slaves." These soldiers looked at each other, then knelt on one knee and swore their loyalty to Ryan. Very good. Ryan found a leather stool to sit down, but this time, these former nobles all stood and dared not cross. "You are all mage apprentices?" "That's right. There is no possibility of becoming a knight here. Tell me about the situation here. Are there other noble territories around? I need people now. Where do you start?" Everyone else looked at Yaz, as if he was the only one who had a little relationship with Ryan. Yaz paused for a moment and said, "What Lord Ryan wants to know is what else is around us besides us. Then let's start from a month ago. A month ago, we were still very wealthy, with more than 800 slaves and more than 200 soldiers. In addition to us, there were 5 or 6 baron lords at the time. There are also 4 or 5 noble territories around. There is a wizard tower about 10 miles to the south. They teach us meditation after paying gold coins. I don't know about further south, but the magician in the wizard tower said that there is a furnace city burning with underground fire on the southern coast, which is not affected by the cold winter. But all this changed one day a month ago. A group of evil devil followers came to our door. They invited us to sacrifice to the devil, so that we could get food and fire, but in fact, they wanted to burn the slaves and even civilians to death, and then eat them. The flames burned brightly because of the corpse oil to dispel the cold. If we don't agree, they will attack, and those barons in our group are also tempted. They incited all the slaves to open the door, and after eating human flesh, they followed the cultists. None of us wanted to eat humans, even if we starved to death. We hid in the depths of the fortress and asked them to open the granary and move all the food away before we came out. We tried to ask for help from the mage tower, but the place where the mage tower was located had become a ruin, and a golem puppet occupied it. Then we hid back in the fortress until today. It was a very simple end of the world survival and encounter. Hearing that these people did not do anything evil even though they had no food, Ryan could not help but look up to them. It seems that these people still have the pride and faith of the nobility, and even the faith of the knights. The cultists helped him choose people. In the extreme despair and hunger, these people still remained rational. Where did these potatoes come from? Ryan pointed to the clean plates on the table and asked. Potatoes? Are you talking about those berries? When we went to the mage's tower for help, we didn't find the magician, but we found these potatoes, several hundred kilograms, all placed there. Yaz pointed behind Ryan, and Ryan turned around and saw a huge stag statue and a cabinet below. He opened it and took a look. It was indeed potatoes, but he didn't know what these people did to make the potatoes that should have sprouted not sprout. Is this normal? Is this abnormal? Ryan didn't know. He just knew from his memories of his previous life that in a place in Siberia, potatoes are more resistant to cold than people. To be on the safe side, looking at these potatoes that were obviously processed, Ryan asked about the location of the mage's tower. Gather the soldiers here, and then follow me. Ryan looked at a soldier next to him, and then looked at Yaz. Take advantage of this time to pack up your property. Don't forget that you have given all your property to get this opportunity. You will never have a chance to come back here in the future. Don't fall behind. Several people nodded silently, as if they had not yet recovered from the process of losing their noble status and all their property. In the snow, Ryan followed his knight attendant behind the 30 soldiers. The difference between these soldiers and the others was that they were tied with ropes. It seems that the group of people can eat because of these people, Brand said softly. He knew very well what such skilled movements meant in a world where ordinary people could see less than 50 meters. They are good soldiers, Harrington also spoke. He wanted to compete with Brand in everything. After walking for about 2.5 hours, Ryan finally saw a collapsed ruin. In a month, the bitter wind and snow had covered the unevenness here. Only the magnificent buildings here could be vaguely seen. We found potatoes here, a soldier pointed to the corner of the ruins. At that time, there was not such thick snow here. There was a stove there, which seemed to be able to isolate the cold. The potatoes were there. Where are the golems you mentioned? Ryan looked around. He could not find any traces of monsters here. No, I don't know. A month of wind and snow has caused extremely serious changes here. Maybe it left. Let's separate and look carefully. Don't go too far. After Ryan finished speaking, the soldiers had already dispersed. Their way of searching was very primitive, that is, to test the depth of the ground under the snow little by little, and then to grope with their own hands. In comparison, the means of the 5 bronze knights of the Clayton family were much more convenient. The flame dragon breathing technique could give them blazing energy and easily melt the snow around them. Lord, this seems to be a cellar, Harrington called out in surprise soon. After confirming that this was indeed a hidden space, Ryan gathered everyone, and then as the cellar opened, the dark entrance was a little frightening. This was the territory of a magician, and no one knew if there were any terrible spells and traps inside. In the end, it was the soldiers who took the lead. Lord, it's safe down there. After confirming that it was safe, Ryan and others began to enter the cellar. There was an oil lamp in the cellar. With a light, Ryan saw a table and notes on the table, as well as 3 treasure chests in the corner full of sprouting potatoes. Chapter 43, Mage's Notes. After Ryan saw the potatoes, he didn't pay too much attention to them. He couldn't run away anyway. A wizard's notebook is often a wizard's greatest wealth. All his knowledge can be recorded in the notebook, and a wizard's notebook is different from those of a warlock. A warlock's notebook may be full of curses, But a wizard's notebook is the life's work of a wizard and is for inheritance. On the continent of Exner, the story that the bard likes to tell the most is that the protagonist gets the wizard's notebook and becomes a great wizard. Often, just opening the beginning can be exchanged for a large glass of fragrant fruit wine. Ryan picked up the wizard's notebook on the table. The first page he opened was a scribbled handwriting, and the first line told the wizard's name. My name is Melania Luna, a magic reverent person under the stars. If someone can see this notebook, it means that I am afraid I have become a loser. The female mage named Melania Luna tells her life in a very gentle tone, but most of them are the days of studying in the southern furnace city, which is very boring and tedious. Perhaps every magician has such a process, which allows them to turn the violent magic factor into their own gentle magic power. The notebook also records the understanding and experience of this female mage, from learning the first magic to controlling magic. If there are magicians who practice the same kind of spells, they will probably be ecstatic. Then there are more boring and tedious daily lives, and the subsequent gradually powerful magic learning and experiments. The wonderful note started from the first and only time that this Luna mage left the furnace city. I have become a great magician. If I want to go one step further and become a great wizard, I must have my own wizard tower, but the cold and ice and snow brought by the winter wind submerged everything. The Crucible City relies on the underground fire to maintain the only remaining warmth on this continent. There are no more extra resources to support me to build a wizard tower, but to the north of this southernmost city, in the boundless northern territory, there must be a lot of wealth buried under the wind and snow. Those nobles who did not have time to escape to the south still have a lot of gold that can be used as a medium, and even wealth such as mithril and refined gold. This is the only way to become a great wizard, but I have never left the Crucible City. I have decided that I will go to the north. Only in this way can I build my own wizard tower and have my own wizard academy. If I have the opportunity to become a sanctuary wizard in the future, perhaps I can try to open the door to the plane, leave this world destined to die, and go to a warm plane without cold. They all said that I was well behaved and rigorous, but this time I disappointed them. I am a girl full of adventurous spirit. I was not panicked after leaving the Crucible City. On the contrary, I was very excited. Maybe my story will be written into a book, and the bard will pass on my story to faraway places. This is not what I should think about now. I left the Crucible City and went to the north to find the countless buried treasures, but the first step is to survive in this cold snow. It's a pity that I couldn't go too far. I returned to a place near the Crucible City with the wealth. In order to prevent the wealth from being divided by those people in the Crucible City, I can't go back. I want to build my own wizard tower in the north and become a great wizard. In fact, my idea is very naive. Maybe this is me who has not experienced practice. I ignored that a person's power is limited. No wonder those people didn't stop me when I left, because they knew that I would bring wealth back, so that they could get some of it. These damn guys, they are so smart. I went through so much to understand things, but no one told me, so I don't plan to go back. The Crucible City is indeed warm, but I may not be suitable for communicating with people. If I want to build my own magic tower here, I must compromise with those nobles on some things, such as teaching them magic. In the continent where the stag spirit has disappeared, the power of the knights has gradually become history. The once famous stag knights are all buried in the winter. If the nobles want to continue to maintain their status, they must have other extraordinary powers. It turns out that they also know how cruel they are to exploit their own people and slaves. In the end, I still reached an agreement with those nobles. They arranged slaves and soldiers to help me build the magic tower, and I taught them meditation in return. In fact, I also thought that if I could meet a suitable apprentice, maybe I could become my disciple, but the talents of these nobles are too poor. It takes them several days to barely feel the free magic factor. This is because I arranged a magic circle at the location of the magic tower. Ryan felt deep malice when he saw this. He continued to read. The mage tower has been built. I want to become a great mage here. It will be a long process, but I have long been accustomed to loneliness. I still keep the cellar that I built before to avoid the wind and snow and the construction of the mage tower. Back then, the potatoes that could grow in the frozen soil in the cold winter sustained my life for a long time. Great mage, it's so difficult. I seem to be failing. I ignored the dead silence of the magic factors brought by the eternal winter in the north. The originally active magic factors seem to be dead in this winter. I don't have many magic materials anymore. Even the gold has been melted by me. I want to make a flame furnace, But if I do this, I will not have the extra materials to be promoted to a great mage, but if I don't make a flame furnace, I can't activate the magic factors around me, and I can't become a great mage. Damn it, why has the Academy never recorded such a thing? Can't those ice magicians do anything in the north? The only materials I have left can only support me to choose one of them, and I'm unwilling to do that. If I can't resist the cold, I can't become a great wizard, and if I can't activate the magic factor, I can't succeed. But in the process of breaking through, I can't leave the wizard tower for a long time, otherwise all my efforts will be in vain. I know I only have one chance, so I plan to take a risk. I don't have enough knowledge to fully develop spells, but among the spells I am best at, my golem puppets are the most powerful. I see an opportunity, but if I fail. Chapter 44, Warcraft. When Ryan saw this, he already had the answer in his mind. This Melania Luna mage failed in the final promotion to Grand Mage. Although she did not say what method she would use to break through the Grand Mage, if she succeeded, the Mage Tower should not become a ruin. The extraordinary path of a magician is much more difficult than that of a knight, and it depends a lot on talent. Mage Apprentice, Magician, Magician, Grand Mage, Wizard, Grand Mage, Grand Mage, Grand Mage, Sanctuary Mage, Legendary Mage. After reaching the Grand Mage, the magician needs to have his own mage tower to store a large amount of magic power. Only in this way can they support them to release powerful spells or even forbidden spells. In short, a magician with a mage tower is a Grand Mage, otherwise there is no difference between him and the Grand Mage. The fall of the Grand Mage will inevitably lead to the destruction of the Mage Tower. If the Mage Tower is destroyed, even if the Grand Mage does not die, it will be almost the same. It seems that this Luna Mage wanted to use her golem puppet to break through, but in the end, I don't know what went wrong. The golem puppet ran away and destroyed the Mage Tower. Ryan asked the soldiers to take the potatoes and set off on the return journey back to the fortress. Then he opened the plane door and took everyone back to the frozen land. This trip didn't yield much, but the appearance of potatoes still surprised Ryan. Sure enough, the other world was his greatest wealth. After returning to the frozen land, Ryan once again instructed the former barons of the Ixnil continent. As you can see, my territory is also on the edge of the north, but at least it won't be so cold. I will give you a piece of land, and I won't collect taxes from you within 3 years. After harvesting wealth worth more than 60,000 gold coins from several nobles, Ryan was also very generous, and he also knew that each of these people still had some gold coins hidden on them, enough for them to hire civilians or buy slaves from him to build a manor. After handing the potatoes to the old steward and telling him about planting potatoes, Ryan began to personally lead people to try to open up the foothills around the frozen land. For the frozen land, nothing can be more important than opening up the land. It's spring, and there are more wild animals in the frozen land. Brand, when you go back, find someone to train a group of militia for hunting, Ryan ordered, and Brand, who was following him, immediately agreed. Looking at the foothills in front of him that were emitting vitality, Ryan reached out to touch the leaves around him and could still feel the cold. He couldn't help but sigh. In order to feed the growing population of the frozen land, he needed at least 10,000 acres of arable land in the initial stage. Without arable land, he would not have enough food. Without enough food, he would not have an army. Without an army, he could only be a village baron. This was something he couldn't stand, so he had to open up the land and plant crops. He had to open up the land and plant crops. Why do I feel that it's getting a little colder around here? Ryan stopped walking and looked around. The forest was a little quiet without the chirping of birds. The spring world seemed a little lifeless. Be careful. Brand drew out his nightsword and squatted slightly. He had hunted alone in the ice and snow before, and he knew clearly that there must be extremely powerful hunters in such silence. On Ryan's other side, red fighting spirit appeared on the surface of Harrington Knight's armor, and his eyes also turned into red vertical pupils at this moment. The breathing method of the Clayton family Knights is the method of simulating breathing. The invisible weak dragon power spread, which came from the breath at the top of the food chain, and finally made the hidden creatures fall into faint fear. The ice and snow ground under their feet collapsed at this moment, and everyone fell down. At the moment when they could not stand, a bloody mouth with 2 cold and sharp teeth came to bite everyone. There was an ice hole under their feet, and what was even more terrifying was that there was a monster hidden here. Looking at the giant python that could devour his entire body, Ryan's pupils couldn't help but shrink. Although he had the physique of a formal knight, he had never experienced such a desperate situation of life and death. At the critical moment, a big sword appeared under his feet. With a cushion brought by the big sword, Ryan changed the direction of his fall with a jump, quickly pulled out the deer antler dagger from his waist and inserted it into the ice wall to stop his falling figure. He was able to hang on the ice wall, but others were not so lucky. A group of knight attendants and a dozen serfs used to survey this oil fell heavily into the nearly 5-meter-high ice cave. Some people rubbed against the sharp ice spikes in the ice cave, and the ground was immediately stained red with blood. Frost Giant Python, when it grows up, it is the peak of the second-level magic beast. Ryan's mind sank to the bottom of the valley. The peak of the second-level magic beast is equivalent to the Silver Knight among the knights. If it were another place or another time, Ryan would be sure to easily hunt this giant python, but it wouldn't work here. The terrain here is too wide, and he brought too few people. While Ryan was still thinking about what to do, Brand had already rushed out. The knight's longsword in his hand was thrown out to help Ryan with the force, and was swallowed by the frost python. This is the only chance. Harrington also reacted at this moment and rushed out directly. Wearing knight armor, they could step on the thin ice-covered ground with every step. Brand's speed was very fast. With his agile steps, he was almost 3 or 5 steps faster than Harrington to get close to the frost python. At this time, the monster seemed to realize that it had swallowed something that was not suitable for digestion, and opened its mouth to spit out the metal. At this moment, Brand punched the frost python's jaw, and the powerful force merged the python's mouth together. It was almost visible to the naked eye that rich blood gushed out of the python's closed mouth. It's injured. Harrington slashed the barrel-like python with a sword, but it only broke a few scales and was useless. The frost python became crazy in pain, and the tail of the python swung towards Harrington. A terrible sense of power came from the sharp air. Harrington raised the sword in his hand to make a defensive posture, but at this time, Brand's voice came from behind. Hold its tail. At the critical moment, Harrington fell into hesitation, but in the end he roared, dropped the sword in his hand, and his fighting spirit burst out. The pupils exuded a heavy dragon's power, and his hands were placed on his chest. The appearance of the dragon's power reduced the speed and power of the giant python's tail by 3 points, but even so, when the tail of the python, which was thicker than his arm, hit him, Harrington still felt dizzy and heard a slight cracking sound in his ears. The knight armor on his body was broken. Boom! Harrington smashed into the wall not far away with his tail. As for the protruding ice ridges on the ground, they had already been smoothed out by his armor. Looking at Harrington holding the frost python's tail tightly, Brand took a deep breath and punched it again and again, about an arm's length below the python's head. Chapter 45 Monster Eggs and Iron Ore. Ryan still had the physique of a formal knight after all. With full preparation, he stepped on the wall in 3 or 2 steps and landed on the ground. At this time, the nearly 15-meter-long frost python was lying quietly on the ground, with a lot of blood and flesh flowing out of its abdomen. As for Brand and Harrington, they were still holding the head and tail of the frost python tightly. It was killed so easily. Harrington's eyes also revealed incredible. He looked at Brand, who was bathed in blood, and a rare trace of awe appeared. So, am I so weak? At this moment, Ryan finally realized that his noble attributes seemed to be more than his knight attributes. Could it be that he had no countermeasures against danger because he lived too safely in his previous life? Fortunately, I'm young enough, Ryan thought so. It seems that he can't be a noble who only knows how to enjoy himself in the future. In these few minutes, Brand's performance did not disappoint the series of entries at the beginning. He helped Ryan avoid the most dangerous attack of the frost python by looking around. Later, he quickly made the best countermeasure and used the knight's long sword swallowed by the frost python to kill this powerful monster. In the process, he even paid attention to Harrington, who would be knocked away if he used the big sword to resist. The knight's long sword can kill the frost python, and letting Harrington control the tail of the frost python can minimize casualties. Otherwise, if the giant python goes crazy and swings its body with terrible power, people will definitely die here. Have you hunted such a monster before? Ryan asked curiously. It was the first time he came into contact with a monster that the nobles were afraid of. Even from beginning to end, this frost python did not release any magic. It died in Brand's hands without a chance. Brand nodded and said, on the continent of Exner, only powerful wild beasts and magical beasts have a chance to survive the winter. They are very good at lurking in the wind and snow to hunt. With more experience, you will naturally know what to do. In that case, the flesh and blood of this frost python will be given to you and Harrington. Thank you, Lord Ryan. Bran's eyes lit up. After expressing his gratitude, he took out the dagger on his body and cut open the head of the python along the corner of its mouth. After a while, he took out a blue prismatic crystal with a width of 2 fingers from the head of the python. Magic crystal. Bran handed the magic crystal to Ryan, who was also a little surprised. This thing is hundreds of times more expensive than the same weight of gold. This small magic crystal is worth at least 2,000 gold coins. Ha ha ha. I've made a lot of money this time, Ryan laughed, and at this moment, another soldier called out, Baron, here are 3 eggs. The soldier's exclamation made Ryan's eyes light up, and he soon came to a mess of dead branches. In the nest built by the frost python, there were 3 large snow-white eggs, each as big as an adult's head. Frost python eggs. Ryan's breathing became a little rapid. Many nobles wanted to tame monsters, but most of them could not be tamed. The only way was to use magic circles to brand the monsters before they were completely born, and then completely subdue them through super high standard domestication during the days after the monsters were born and grew up. After all, the wisdom of monsters is no less than that of humans. It seems that this frost python appeared in the frozen land because of these 3 eggs. More than 90% of the cubs of creatures need a relatively warm environment during the process of gestation and birth. For the frost python, which should live in the depths of the north, its cubs also need to survive in the mild places in the south until they adapt to the cold and gradually return to the colder places in the north. This hole should not be dug by itself. Harrington staggered over with the help of a soldier and said to Ryan, Master Ryan, this should be a mineral vein. The temperature of the mineral vein is often higher than other places. The frost python, which is like a fish in water in the winter environment, should also have a high sense of temperature. Nodding, Ryan ordered several soldiers to dig in a farther place. Sure enough, within a moment, a fist-sized piece of iron ore appeared in front of Ryan. Northern Wind Province has nothing but iron ore. Sure enough, my territory should not be without ore veins. Ryan laughed. His territory finally had a stable source of income. Of course, the more important purpose of iron ore now is to meet domestic demand. And now is not the right time to mine. Protect this place first, then go to Lingdu County to buy a few spell scrolls, and wait until these 3 eggs hatch before mining the iron ore. Ryan looked at the 3 quiet frost python eggs, wondering if he could successfully hatch 1 or 2. That hole must have been secretly mined by someone in the past. The frozen land has not had a lord for decades, but the people living here are not completely ignorant of the surroundings. Hearing Ryan's words, Rosen, who followed behind him, asked, after returning, will we capture the original villagers of the frozen land? Ryan waved his hand and said, no need, and the carpenters and blacksmiths in the frozen land have all run to warm places. It should be the blacksmiths who know this place. What's more, if they knew, they would have told me long ago. After seeing the treatment of the Bane family, good news came one after another. With the discovery of monster eggs and iron ore veins, some of the serfs brought by Ryan actually found a place and soil suitable for planting on their way back. Very good. From now on, I will pardon your slavery. From now on, you and your family will become my people. The rough man named Dudley knelt on the ground excitedly and kowtowed to Ryan. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. You should know that in the frozen land territory, unlike other places, civilians can be allocated their own houses. Although the civilians who have been transformed from slaves only have the right to use the house but not the ownership, they can make the house completely their own through hard work in 10 or 20 years. Such good things have led to no fierce conflicts in the frozen land territory until now, even when Ryan was not there. Looking at the large piece of mountain land in front of him, Ryan's heart did not fluctuate at all for the miscellaneous melons and dates that were rewarded. He just thought that he hoped that this piece of land could be reclaimed into more fields suitable for farming. Chapter 46 Lordship. Ryan's expectations were not fulfilled after all. According to speculation, the newly discovered mountains after the spring can only cultivate less than 1,000 acres of arable land at most. This amount is completely inadequate for the frozen land territory with a population today. We have to continue to search, or find a way to cultivate arable land. Tell everyone in the territory that if someone can cultivate fertile land that can be cultivated in the wasteland, I will reward his family with 1 acre for every 10 acres, and 1 gold coin for each of the remaining 9 acres. and I will not collect taxes from them for 3 years. Ryan directly invested heavily. Nothing can stimulate development more than more benefits. Even though slaves have needs. If someone can really do it, then the value of that person itself will completely exceed the benefits Ryan gave. He hopes that some talents will emerge in his territory, rather than mediocre people who are muddle-headed and macy all day long, eating and sleeping. For this era and environment, all technology is irrelevant. Only talents and rights are the first driving force for development. Ryan inspected the territory he was developing almost every day, but the call from the Northwind province made him realize that he was not a stand-alone noble. Sure enough, something happened. It's still a big deal. Ryan looked at the letter sent by the governor of the Northwind province to all the nobles, which only mentioned 2 things. First, the empire discussed the punishment of the Northwind province, which was a punishment, not a punishment. It seems that the orcs went south to wreak havoc on the entire Northwind province last winter, causing too many nobles to die and injure, which still made the great nobles of the empire angry. This responsibility, of course, should fall on the nobles of the Northwind province, especially the Earl Governor. But it seems that the Earl Governor does not intend to resist it alone, and the pressure will be shared by everyone below. As for the second thing, it seems much more terrible. Lord System, Ryan didn't feel it when his fingers turned purple as he held the letter tightly in his hand. From the few explanations in it, Ryan seemed to have seen the bloody storm within the empire, whether in politics, military, or even economy. No, it's on the road. Prepare the carriage, Ryan shouted loudly. Soon, the gorgeous carriage from the Clayton family, pulled by 2 magical beasts, appeared at the gate of the castle. Ryan didn't even have time to eat lunch today, and took hundreds of knights in attendance to the Northwind province. Snap! The whip made of bark fell on the orcs, leaving a bloody mark. You damn orcs, hurry up and work. If you don't finish the work today, all the orcs will have no food to eat. On a hot construction site, the supervisor's loud voice resounded in the hustle and bustle. He deliberately made his voice drown out the sound of quarrying stones and building roads, trying to get the master and the gorgeous carriage that was slowly moving in the distance to look at him. Hurry up and move the stones on the road. Can't you see that the Lord is coming? If you scare the horses, I'll chop off your heads immediately. Kneel down. Who allowed you to look up, sitting in the carriage with a magic circle? Even if it is driving on a road that has not been fully opened up, you still can't feel any bumps. Even in this somewhat cold north. The carriage is as warm as a quilt. A few months ago, Ryan had to cross mountains and ridges to go from the frozen land to other places in the Northwind province, relying on his own legs. But a few months later, he has sat in a carriage exclusively for nobles, and the soldiers following him are all riding war horses from the highlands. Compared with the past, it is now so majestic and spectacular. The swamps that were as flat as walking on the ground in the cold winter are no longer so easy to walk after the spring. The frozen mud has melted, causing the team to stop and clean up and repair after passing through the swamps. The place chosen is, of course, the nearest barony of Hatton. Leon, my friend. Baron Hatton's eyes widened, and he looked at Ryan's carriage and the 100 soldiers in uniform with shock. His eyes almost popped out. This, he was a little confused. How long had it been? A few months ago, Ryan was still dressed like a peasant, a poor baron, a child who was completely incomparable to him, but now, with this lineup and this scale, Hatton felt that he was already weak. Ryan is also going to Northwind City, right? Hatton asked in a somewhat mean way. His whole fat face was squeezed together, and he was particularly flattering. Ryan looked at Baron Hatton, who was hesitant to speak, smiled and said, "Mr. Hatton is my friend. This time I stopped here to invite Mr. Hatton to go to Northwind City with me." "Okay, it's settled." After speaking directly, Hatton was about to go to Ryan's magic carriage, and he even brought the 2 cat women he had looted from Nightwat's territory. Ryan reached out to stop Hatton, and said to the 2 obviously worn-out cat slave girls, "Baron Hatton, you should know what happened when you go to Northwind City this time. It's not good to think about enjoying yourself at this time." Hatton looked at the 2 slave girls with some reluctance, and finally gave in. "Okay, then I won't bring the mage this time, and travel light." It was indeed quite light, 200,000 kilograms of pig iron and 2,000 gold coins. "Why did you bring so much iron?" Ryan asked curiously, and Hatton, who was leaning on the soft deerskin on the carriage with a look of enjoyment, became a little bitter after hearing this. "The orcs went south, and my barony suffered heavy losses. Most of the food was gone. If I had hidden the remaining food underground, I would have starved to death. Those damn orcs robbed all the wealth in my territory, and they didn't even care about these iron mines. After the orcs were gone, we still have to make a living. We can only rely on trade. My territory can only take out these iron mines for trading." Hatton was a little dejected, but soon became optimistic again. But in comparison, many barons in the Northwind province died, and those who survived, their territories were much worse than mine. Some people even had their castles breached and their wealth looted. Ha ha ha, as the saying goes, joy and suffering are contrasted. Compared with most nobles in the Northwind province, Hatton's losses were indeed much less. But this comparison made Ryan speechless. He could only change the subject and said, "What do you think about the lord system that the Empire, the Church, and the Southern Kingdoms have jointly agreed on, Mr. Hatton?" Those nobles who stood at the pinnacle of power were planning to create a title called Lord, below the Baron and above the Knight. It was not a title, but it was a noble. Chapter 47, The Unexpected Lord Hatton. The term noble is used to describe the 5 ranks of nobles, Duke, Marquess, Earl, Viscount and Baron, who have made great contributions to the establishment and development of the Empire. In other words, whether it is a Grand Duke or a Baron, they can be called nobles, and their descendants are born superior. Moreover, nobles are often members of the extraordinary, or they control most of the extraordinary paths, which leads to this strict hierarchy, which has never changed. The lord mentioned by the Empire is a title below the Baron and above the commoners and knights. The lord is not a title, but because it is completely higher than the commoners, it is also a part of the nobility. Even if it is only the lowest rank of nobles, it is still a noble. The lord has no territory of his own, no people of his own, and even has to pay taxes to the Empire. This is the biggest difference between the lord and the 5th-ranked nobles. You must know that even in a barony that cannot be worse, everything there belongs to the Baron Lord. So why do we have such a lord title? The reason given by the Empire is that in the name of the Lord of Dawn, it hopes that the nobles of the continent will have the courage to expand the territory and establish merits like their ancestors. The reasons are remarkable, and can even be said to be completely reasonable, standing on the moral high ground. But in Ryan's opinion, this is bullshit. If this is just within the Empire, it's fine, but the lord system is to be implemented among all the nobles on the entire continent. With this relationship, Ryan collected the breadth of political struggle from those high-sounding words. In the final analysis, it still has to start with a pan-dimensional war of the gods. Today's human race is shrinking in the south of Norris continent, on 1/3 of the land. The war of gods is over, but the disaster continues. It is a normal person who knows that when the disaster comes, what kind of people can have a higher probability of survival? Those who have strength and power are at the peak of survival. Even the disaster of winter cannot freeze them to death. Therefore, on this 1/3 of the land, there are many nobles who went south. There are empires, kingdoms, scattered dukedoms, and territories of nobles of all sizes. The disaster can take away 30% of the nobles on the Norris continent, but the remaining 70% are squeezed into only 1/3 of the land. After years of development, this 1/3 of the land has gathered too many nobles. Everyone knows that the number of nobles cannot remain unchanged. Even after the disaster, when no one wants to have a war, the number of nobles is increasing. But there is a fatal problem. The increase of nobles requires territory. A baron needs at least a village-level territory. Regardless of the size of the territory must exist. But now the place that humans can occupy is only 1/3 of the past, which cannot be called vast and sparsely populated. Even under the threat of orcs, there are territories lost every year. Why did Grand Guildmires go on an expedition to the Northwind province? Why do the nobles in the Northwind province, who have been passed down for many years, still leave their homes? There is only one reason: they are all in the struggle for territory in the south, and the territory is getting smaller and smaller, resulting in less and less wealth. The emergence of an extra Northwind province at least alleviates the disputes and killings caused by the emergence of a considerable number of noble quotas. For example, Ryan, if Ryan's baronship is in the south, where will it be distributed to him? It can only be from other people's bowls. Then because of this kind of thing, Ryan, who had shared other people's interests, inevitably had his own enemies. This problem is not the first time it has appeared. The Empire strictly prohibits any form of killing between nobles. You must know that there is a reason for any ban. The conflicts that have broken out have killed many nobles, but nobles are all related. If you don't pay attention, it will be a war between two countries. If Ryan died in the frozen land, would the Earl of Clayton's family not care? Then it would involve more than just the death of a baron. In short, there is not enough territory to be distributed to those new nobles. But among the nobles, especially the great nobles, their demand for noble quotas is necessary. After all, the great nobles only have one title to inherit. If they can't open up, there will always be some bloody struggle stories. No great noble is willing to see their offspring killing each other. So what should we do? Now the solution has come out, which is to give noble titles, but not land. Give noble titles, what to give? Baron? Viscount? This is definitely not okay, so we can only create a title. Lord was born. Hearing Ryan's question, Hatton also sat up a little straighter and raised his palm quite seriously. Ryan finally saw that Hatton was wearing an emerald ring on his finger. The ring was inlaid with a ruby, and inside the ruby, there was a carving of a warhorse with its front hooves raised. Baron Ryan, please call me Baron Shenma. From now on, my territory will be called Shenma territory. Hatton raised his chin and looked at Ryan, then suddenly laughed. Ryan, to be honest, you should have your own Baron badge. You know, once the lordship system is implemented, every noble will have the right to grant a lordship, which means that even barons like us will be promoted to a higher level in status. What is the most important thing? From now on, it will be 100 times more difficult for others to become barons than before. Our status will be unshakable. The most important thing is, you still remember Walter, that guy's son has appeared, but with a lordship system, that Walter kid will hardly have the opportunity to become a baron like us. In the future, at the dance in Zero Crossing City, we barons can also be high above. Hatton laughed as he spoke, and Ryan looked at this baron with some surprise. Although Hatton did not seem to have made any achievements in anything, his political acumen surprised Ryan. He thought Hatton could not see through the truth behind this matter, and was angry that more nobles appeared. Looking at Ryan's expression, Hatton thought that the boy had not reacted, and could not help but said, Ryan, you have to understand that this is a good thing for us nobles who already have noble titles and territories. The number of barons may only decrease, not increase in the future. With fewer numbers, our status, rights and wealth will be higher. The lords emerged with the help of us fifth-class nobles. We have the right to confer lords, and after we fall, those lords will also lose their titles. Do you think that in this case, the lords who depend on us will try their best to protect our families? And the most important thing is, Ryan, you have to understand that this system was formulated by the imperial family, the great nobles, and those great nobles in the south. Our interests are consistent with their interests in major issues. Do you think the rules they make will harm themselves? Since it is impossible, then the nobility they formulate must be beneficial to them. Since it is beneficial to them, it must be beneficial to us as well. Chapter 48 Arrival at Northwind City. Hatton and Ryan saw different things behind this matter, but the final answer was surprisingly consistent. That is, the emergence of the lord system will indeed increase the number of nobles, but at the same time, it will also make the status and voice of these fifth-class nobles higher. As for wealth, it is really hard to say. The letter said it very clearly. Every noble has the right to confer the title of lord. Although there is a limit on the number, even a baron can arbitrarily make up to 5 people become lords of the empire, according to his own wishes. The lord exists because of these nobles, so naturally, if these conferred nobles fall, those lords will not be recognized. But since they have become nobles, lords also have certain rights. They are no longer the people and wealth of the fifth-class nobles, but supporters. They can even oppose the conferred nobles and have their own territory if they can get it. So what the imperial letter said, hoping that the nobles living on 1/3 of the land can encourage development, is not false information. The main reason for the emergence of lords is that there are many nobles and few territories, and everyone thinks the territory is too small. But the secondary reason is that they really want to explore. It's just that the expectation is beautiful, but even the broken place of the frozen land is not willing to come. How can they go to the eternal winter in the north to fight with the orcs and the more terrible alien races for territory? Political struggle may eventually be a boomerang, back to political struggle. Their trip to Northwind City this time is actually one of them. Because after such a long time, the Empire seems to have finally remembered that there are many pioneering nobles and pioneering knights in the Northwind province. The members of the imperial family will come. Originally, this should be the responsibility of the church, But in recent years, the speed at which the imperial power replaces the divine power is a bit fast. Thinking of this, Ryan suddenly remembered something. If this is the case, doesn't it mean that the pioneering orders in the hands of Grand Duke Myers have become waste paper? His expression was strange, and Hatton beside him also became very exciting in an instant. Grand Duke Myers conquered the entire North Wind province for the Empire, relieving a lot of pressure. What a great contribution, but these contributions were replaced by a basket of development orders. Now, even this shameful thing seems to be useless? Doesn't it mean that Grand Duke Myers spent a lot of effort to conquer the North Wind province, but in the end he didn't get any benefits? There's not even a descendant of the Myers family in the North Wind province. Hell, I can't think about it anymore. North Wind City. When Ryan and Hatton came to this provincial governor's city, most of the nobles in the North Wind province had already arrived here. Shenmue territory and Frozen territory are still too far away from here. The people coming and going on the streets are either soldiers or slaves. As more and more nobles come to North Wind City, the civilians here no longer dare to walk on the streets easily. In particular, these civilians have gradually learned some secrets that have been made public in the south from the Chamber of Commerce in the north. Ryan and Hatton stayed at the mansion of a baron noble, and were soon approached by Viscount Miles's men. Before the Parliament in 3 days, we in Lingdu County need to discuss it first, and everything should be in the interests of Lingdu County. When he arrived at Viscount Miles's mansion, the old Viscount was in high spirits. Who would have thought that Lingdu County, which was originally the weakest, now has the right to speak and has become one of the top 3. In comparison, Viscount Dragon's face was not so good. He stared at Viscount Miles's old face. Did they say that this guy was about to die after releasing the magic scroll? Why hasn't he died yet? Why can he survive this winter? Ryan also noticed this. He could only guess that the Miles family's foundation over the years is indeed good. Of course, compared to this, Ryan is more concerned about the Empire's handling of the North Wind province. He glanced at Baron Hatton, who coughed twice and said in a high-spirited tone, "Lord Viscount Miles, is the Empire really going to give up the North Wind province?" Hearing this, many people became nervous. While whispering to each other, they did not forget to look at Viscount Miles's face. At this moment, Viscount Miles seemed to have aged a few years. But he only said regretfully, "The Empire has decided to cancel the annual subsidy of 1 million gold coins to the North Wind province. This is the news from the Senate, but it will not be fully announced until 3 days later. It's just canceling 1 million gold coins. The biggest losses should be Governor Winter and the 2 earls, right?" Hatton asked with some doubts. He was very sensitive to politics, but only in certain aspects. "Hatton, have you really stuffed your brain into that fat body?" A nobleman dressed in gorgeous clothes beside him sneered and said sarcastically, "The Empire has been disdainful of the North Wind province since 30 years ago. If it weren't for the annual expenditure of 1 million that made the great nobles of the Empire remember the North Wind province, it would have been forgotten long ago. Now that there is no 1 million, there will no longer be any information about the North Wind province in the annual performance report. You can't possibly think that our governor will pay for the repair of the fortress in Xiangshan Plain. This is impossible. The tens of millions of gold coins of the Empire were divided up before. Expecting them to spend money to repair the fortress? Absolutely impossible. In short, without the 1 million gold coins, it means that the Empire no longer thinks about getting more from the North Wind province. On the contrary, I'm afraid it will have to collect taxes. The Empire exempted the North Wind province from many taxes. In addition, the North Wind province has caused constant political struggles within the Empire over the years, so even if these nobles do not pay those taxes and directly embezzle them, the Empire will not say anything. But now that they no longer spend money on the North Wind province, the Empire has half given up on this place, so they naturally have to double the 30 million gold coins they have spent in the past 33 years. "Give me money," Hatton shouted directly. "It's impossible for me to give money. How can my Shenmue territory have money?" Hatton still cried that his territory was looted by orcs and even the castle was breached. "Hatton, we are all neighbors. Don't we know whether your castle has been breached? Besides, Shenmue territory, what a crappy name." The nobleman named Baron Roche finally couldn't help but disdain it. "Do you think your Crow territory sounds good?" Looking at the increasingly noisy meeting, Ryan knew that there would be no results this time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49 Provincial Conference. 3 days later, at the governor's mansion in Bifang City, the nobles of the entire Bifang province finally gathered. It was this number that looked a bit pitiful. In the past, the nobles of Bifang province were still very lively, but after the orc invasion, everything changed. The dead were indeed regrettable, but the living were still talking and laughing. Ryan sat in the area of Lingdu County, watching the earls and viscounts talking and laughing. He even had memories of the one sitting in the middle. To be precise, it was the two intertwined vine-like emblems on the scepter in the other's hand. Count Laxo of the Empire, the master of flying snakes and forests. This is a powerful earl of the Empire, occupying the warm forests in the south. It is said that the fertile land reclaimed is enough for millions of people to squander at will. For Bifang province, this is simply an unimaginable paradise. After a long time of politeness with the three earls around him, the earl who came on behalf of the empire finally coughed twice and stood up. The huge parliament hall suddenly became extremely quiet. Everyone looked at Earl Laxu, watching him take out a piece of snow-white silk from the scepter in his hand, on which there were many words. Since everyone is here, let's get together early and leave early. This Bifang province is really cold, Earl Laxu said with some disdain, and no one refuted. If they had a choice, they would also like to stay in the warm south. But the other party's words still made people feel uncomfortable. Starting this year, the Empire will cancel all preferential treatment for Bifang province, Laxu said concisely. In fact, there are many words on the silk, most of which describe the Empire's expectations and support for Bifang province over the years, but this person directly summarized it. Every year, the support of 1 million gold coins will be cancelled. At the same time, Bifang province will pay the Empire 1.5 million gold coins in taxes every year, 1.5 million. As soon as Earl Laxu finished speaking, a noble stood up angrily. He came from Hanshan County and was one of the few nobles who survived by chance. He was shocked after hearing this. Where can the North Wind province come up with 1.5 million gold coins? Laxu snorted coldly, ignoring the Baron and looking at Viscount Landa, one of the 7 governors of the North Wind province. He was sure that the man stood up because he was prompted by the Viscount. 1.5 million gold coins, divided among each noble, was a considerable sum. Hanshan County was the worst place ravaged by orcs, so it was difficult to come up with the money, but they were very smart to involve everyone in the North Wind province. Indeed, soon people began to speak up, saying that the North Wind province was in a difficult situation, not to mention 1.5 million, even 500,000 could not be taken out. Laxu did not indulge these people. I just want to inform you that the tax revenue of North Wind province must be paid every year. As for how you pay it, that is not a problem for the Empire to think about, and this time when the orcs went south, only your North Wind province did not stop them in the entire Empire. Many people in the entire South are now wondering if the Empire has become old. The reputation of the Empire has been offended. You have made a big mistake this time and you still dare to bargain. Laxu was telling the truth. Perhaps it was because the Empire had half given up on North Wind province, so it did not give too severe a punishment for not resisting the invasion of the orcs. Even Earl Winter was still the governor of North Wind province. But these things cannot be brought up. Every noble knows that face is very important to them. Okay, finally, Earl Winter stood up and said, North Wind province will definitely not live up to the trust of the Empire. This is the best. Earl Laxu nodded and said that telling these nobles the news they already knew was just a task for him and there was no benefit. On the contrary, the next thing would affect the interests of the Earl. Since you already know, then sit down and let's discuss the second thing. In the south, the Empire and many great nobles held an exchange on the holy mountain of the church, intending to implement a lord system in various territories on the continent. This matter has not been completely finalized. The Empire also wants to know what the nobles in each province think. As for the lord system, after a brief introduction, Earl Laxu fell silent, and the entire conference hall was even more eerily quiet. After a while, a voice appeared. It would be great to be able to open up the northern border, a baron said with a smile. He has several children. Although he is not worried about the inheritance issue, he was still very melancholy before. It is an honor for those peasants to be able to expand territory for the Empire. If it were you, I would just give them the title of Pioneer Knight. There is no need to become nobles, after all, they conquered the territory. It's not easy to say that. Otherwise, what would our ancestors have become? Yes, Lord, it sounds pretty good. The nobles naturally smiled like old foxes, and some even called each other and praised each other's family emblems. But some were happy and some were sad. A noble stood up. He sat on the edge and did not have his own family emblem. At this moment, he was a little nervous and a little angry. Lord Laxu, I wonder what the Empire plans to do with us pioneer nobles and pioneer knights. Count Laxu also said calmly, the pioneer nobles before this year will be officially observed after the territory. If qualified, they will become the Empire's canonized baron nobles. If the territory is not qualified, they will become lords. For pioneer knights, as long as there is a territory, they will also become lords. The Empire promised that as long as our territory is large enough, we will be canonized as nobles. A pioneer knight stood up. Under his wide clothes, many people could see that he was still wearing leather armor, and at this time they couldn't help but look at him unkindly. This is a meeting of nobles. What does it mean to dress like this? Is it to lower their grade? Knight Kitolin, are you questioning the Empire's decision? Count Winter snorted coldly and looked at the pioneer knight. The powerful knight's pressure forced him to sit down. The Empire did say that back then, but a lord is also a member of the nobility. As long as you become a lord, no one will deny that you are not a noble when you go out, otherwise it will cause condemnation from the entire human race. So, strictly speaking, the Empire has not broken its promise. As for whether you can become a baron, it also depends on the size of the territory. It can't be said that you will definitely become a baron if you get a pioneering order. There is no such thing. If it were in the past, many of you would not be able to become lords and nobles, and you would become wandering knights and lose your own territory. This time, the Empire directly gave all of you noble seats. Can lords and barons be the same? After hearing what Galaxu said, some people in the crowd couldn't help but speak. And some of the more cautious ones continued to ask. If we become lords, but lords need to rely on the 5th class title, what kind of nobles do we belong to? Well, this Laxu narrowed his eyes slightly, and his tone was a little high. Logically speaking, you should become a lord of the noble you received the development order from, but the Northwind province is too far away. In order to help each other and develop the vast northern border, the Empire suggests that you should choose the 5th class nobles near your own territory, and the Empire can decide that the first batch of lords this year have the right to actively choose 5th class nobles. Obviously, the Empire also knows that there are basically conflicts between developing territory and neighboring nobles. In order to ease such conflicts, the lords cannot rely on the 5th class nobles closest to them. Chapter 50 Rejection. Ryan could already hear the many discussions. Some barons have already started discussing how to collect the land of future lords, and some are planning to turn some pioneering nobles who were originally qualified to become barons into lords, and then eat them up. There are gradually two factions here. One faction is the 5th class nobles. The emergence of the lord system has an impact on them, but the lord must rely on the 5th class title, which allows them to gain a lot of wealth. Especially in this Northwind province, it is equivalent to gathering several territories together, and the wealth, of course, must be gathered in the hands of these 5th class titles. As for those pioneering nobles and knights, some began to plan to make their territories become baronies, while others were desperate and angry. Becoming a lord? Is it really a noble? They don't believe it, and always feel that this is inferior. My lord Earl, what if we reject the Empire's proposal this time? A pioneering knight stood up and said. He represented a large group of people. If all the nobles in the Northwind province reject the decision of this Southern Conference, I think it will still have some effect, Laxu said with a smile, but other nobles disagreed. What do you mean all the nobles in the Northwind province reject it? Knight Wheeler, don't talk nonsense. A baron snorted coldly and couldn't help saying, in my opinion, the Northwind province obviously all agree. You pioneer knights have not become nobles yet, and those pioneer nobles have not yet completely become nobles. What qualifications do you have to participate in the decision of this meeting? Hearing this, many people glared at the baron. This would be a slap in the face. They are not those mudlegs. My lord, how can I go further after becoming a lord? In the end, these pioneer knights began to accept the reality. They could not change this result, so they could only ask some realistic questions. Well, this Count Laxu was also embarrassed. The Empire really hadn't thought about this kind of thing. You must know that the establishment of the lord system, to a certain extent, solidified the current class. Becoming a lord is almost the same. It is very difficult to climb up. This was originally used to restrict these powerful nobles, because they were worried that these nobles wanted to become dukes. Unexpectedly, these future lords still had hope. This lord system is a reward for the empire to expand its territory. As long as more territory can be expanded, the lord can naturally become a baron, and there is no chance to become a future Grand Duke, Earl Laxu said casually. Anyway, it was not his business to deal with future matters, so he could just say whatever he wanted. The empire could not openly block all the ways to rise, and such an answer could also make many nobles feel at ease. Then the next thing was very simple, to discuss the lordship, to determine which pioneering noble territory could become a baron territory, and how to share the 1.5 million gold coins. Of course, except for the second thing that was related to some pioneering nobles in Laxu, the rest were the results of the nobles of the North Wind province discussing behind closed doors. As Earl Laxu went to various places in the North Wind province to investigate who could become a baron from a pioneering noble, other nobles also closed the door and began to discuss the other two things. Who should the lord be attached to? There is almost no answer to this question, but one answer can be ruled out at the same time, that is, almost all pioneer knights cannot become lords of nearby baronies. After all, in the past 20 to 30 years, there is almost no other thing between them except disputes over interests. If they become lords under the other family now, wouldn't it be a trap? Just look at Hatton's appearance. If the pioneer knight Littlewater not far away becomes a lord under Baron Hatton's family, I'm afraid it won't take long for him to be eaten up. So this choice is very interesting. If the pioneer knight wants to rely on a certain noble, the first thing he wants is that the other party can support him to deal with the original opponents around his territory. For example, Ryan saw that Littlewater, who was about the same age as him, was talking happily with Baron Roche of Crow territory, and they seemed to have reached some kind of agreement. Thanks to Earl Laxu's words, these pioneer knights still have the right to choose for the time being. But no one came to Ryan. There was no one in Lingdu County, because they all knew what the frozen land territory looked like. Of course, they didn't know what the frozen land territory was now. In just a few months, even the neighbor Baron Hatton was shocked and unbelievable about the frozen land territory. Other nobles paid little attention to it, not to mention that Ryan had been outside the circle of nobles since he came to the North Wind province. When Ryan thought that this matter had nothing to do with him, he did not expect that a pioneer knight would target him. Baron Ryan, Blake greets you. A middle-aged pioneer knight greeted Ryan with standard aristocratic etiquette. His lowered eyes were filled with a touch of careful wisdom. The visitor was not kind. But it was true that how could a kind person find the lord of the frozen land territory? Knight Blake, hello. Ryan also responded with a calm smile, and then said, Knight Blake, are you planning to become the lord of my family? As you think, my knight territory has a small town with a population of 3,000, of which more than 2,000 are my slaves, plus the knight territory also has 2 small iron mines and a hunting forest, Blake said, with pride in his tone, which was the accumulation of his family for many years. Indeed, for a pioneer knight, if this incident had not happened, I'm afraid that this Knight Black would soon become Baron Black, and his family background would be even richer than Baron Hatton. If it were any baron, hearing that a pioneer knight with such a family background had come to him, he would probably be ecstatic. But Ryan was not fooled. Knight Black belonged to Yinchuan County, which was the county closest to the Wing Canyon in the North Wind province and the southernmost county. It was considered the richest county. Why would he come to him, the poorest lord of the northernmost frozen land territory? Migrate to the frozen land territory with everyone? Impossible. He could only occupy his knight territory with peace of mind by borrowing Ryan's name. With Knight Black's wealth, there should be many barons and even viscounts willing to recruit you, right? Ryan said with a smile, and then continued. Knight Black may go to find Viscount Hogg. I think he will give you a good answer. Ryan was too lazy to accept these pioneer knights, each of whom had high aspirations. Moreover, under the lordship system, barons are eligible to be conferred lordships, so why go far away? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.